Welcome. My name is Manpreet Jazz, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMA LOTN. I'm joined, as always, by my man Cody Saftic. You guys can find him on Twitter at CJ Saftic, and we are here propping you up for UFC Fight Island 8, headlined by Neil Magny and Michael Chiesa in a very pivotal welterweight belt. Cody, what's going on? This is the second event in this week stretch that we're going on. How was that last event for you? Are you ready for this next one? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, hard to be ready when they're throwing so many fights at you all the time. But yeah, that's the old saying. If you stay ready, you don't got to get ready. So that's the benefit. We know who these guys are. We've done the tape study. And I feel like this card, again, has a lot of good plays on it. Last week, I wasn't so high on a lot of the underdogs, and it ended up being kind of an underdog card. I thought for the most part, we did a good job of keeping some of those at the bottom, ones that we weren't fully trusting on, pointing at some of the flaws in guys like Santiago Ponzinibbio and this and that. But ultimately, listen, I got the headliner wrong, Calvin Kattar, and the method in which he got whooped. I'm not going to hear the end of it. And I appreciate the fans throwing it because that's the passion of the game, right? Beyond that, yeah, that Joaquin Buckley KO. I mean, I think that KO'd a lot of tickets for a lot of people. As far as the prop show went, I gave 3 props on the show. The Imavov fight ended up getting canceled, so that dropped us down to 2 props. And then wasn't I mentioned that Joaquin Buckley KO? Ooh, well, that cost us a little bit on the prop as well. Fight did not start round 3. We did cash the top of versus Carlos Felipe going the distance, which is plus 125. So not terrible on the prop side of things. Hopefully we can get second event into the new year, get that ball rolling. Maybe the first event was a little bit of false start. We'll get it back here, get it going. So glad to be joining you once again.
I'm glad that you said false start because I'm going to run with that narrative as well, too, because I had a little bit of a shit show of an event as well. But luckily for us, we don't have to wait too long to get another event. We got a Wednesday card at 9 a.m. Eastern as well. So make sure you guys remember that as well. It's not your regularly scheduled 7 p.m. Eastern prelim card or anything like that. It's nice, bright and early, even earlier for you West Coasters, 6 a.m. Preliminary start time. But I believe the UFC 257 card this weekend is also regularly scheduled time, so we don't have to worry about that. Just get up nice and early this Wednesday. If you don't got to work, maybe call in sick or something like that. That's a possibility as well too. That's exactly what your boy is doing over here. All right, before we get into the card, I do want to remind you guys we are willing to take questions from you guys from the chat. You guys just drop them whenever we're talking about a specific matchup. If I see anything that I like that I want to address, I'll be sure to put it onto the show, and me and Cody could definitely address it for you. And again, before we get into the breakdowns, make sure you drop a like and subscribe for the Odds channel, just to let everybody know that you guys are enjoying what we do for you guys. Me and Cody normally every Thursday. Obviously today a little bit of an exception given that Wednesday card, so we're here nice and early in the week on a Monday, but we will be back on Thursday for propping you up. All right. Without further ado, let's get into this card. We got Victoria Leonardo versus I'm going to struggle with this one a little bit. Manon Fiorot, who's a kickboxer. We currently got minus 200 on Fiorot and plus 170 on Victoria Leonardo. If you guys remember, Leonardo is the one that sprung the upset against Chelsea Hackett on the Contender Series. She came in as a plus 230-ish underdog. She went out there, held her own in the stand-up, or at least got her lead leg torn up a little bit, and then was able to get the fight to the ground and eventually make Chelsea Hackett pay with some vicious ground and pound. She ends up securing a contract for herself, and now she finds herself kind of in a similar situation against a very high-level kickboxer / Muay Thai specialist in Manon Fiorot. Just doing the quick study on Fiorot, we got a girl that seems to be a little bit more educated in the grappling realm than Chelsea Hackett. So there might not be as clear of a path to victory for Leonardo this time around. Quite impressed with what I'm seeing from Fiorot. We see her in the UAE Warriors promotion, who seem to be running a show every freaking month since this COVID thing started. But in July, she fought, and she fought 2 more times in the span of, 5 months, and she secures herself a spot in the UFC roster. I think she has a ton of potential. I think she's a great prospect. I'm really looking forward to what she has to bring to the table. And the spot that I like to hear the most for her, I do think she gets the victory. Not only do I think she gets the victory, I think she also secures a knockout victory in that second round. Specifically, we've seen Leonardo struggle a little bit with head kick artists, and you're getting a serious head kick artist here with Manon Fiorot. And Fiorot round 2 is plus 650, or even if you want to take her inside the distance is plus 230. I think there's a ton of value there. I don't think Leonardo's going to have much for her on the feet. She might be able to get this to the ground, but given what we've seen from Manon and her grappling prowess, I feel like it's much further along than you would expect for a fighter with only 7 or 8 fights in the MMA world, but mainly coming from a kickboxing background. So I'm going with the Figueiredo side, and I think she gets it done inside the distance. How do you see Cody?
Yeah, I got Modafferi as well. This fight actually opened on the money line as a even money fight. It was -110 aside, and already you see that it's now shifted to Modafferi -200. So people are doing this tape study, people are there researching, and they're realizing this girl's for real. I mean, she's got a very credible kickboxing background, karate background, moves very light on her feet, loves to attack the body with the kicks. She'll just attack the body over and over. As you start to think like you got to lean on it, she goes to the leg, she'll go upstairs with a head kick. And I just feel like this has got all the makings of a good debut for a young fighter out of France that's going to come over here and transition well. I mean, when you look at 125 pounds, I mean, not girls that are really known for finishes, but man, Figueiredo, it doesn't matter what round it is, she's attacking all the time. First round, second round, third round. I really like your prop play because when I look at Modafferi, I think, geez, I think she's got a good chance of winning this fight. Money line shifted towards her, but by TKO is currently sitting at +255. Now, the second round TKO prop was like, I think it was like plus, you mentioned 650. I thought I saw like 750, 850. And there's a third round TKO prop as well. But she does have the ability that maybe she just goes out there and gets the job done in the first round. And then you think, Jesus, I was on the TKO, but I went with the second round. And I didn't think she was going to come out and look at that good, but she does. She gets that first round finish. So just simply by TKO at +255, I think that's pretty good. When you look at Victoria Leonardo, both of her pro losses, just like her last little stretch of opponents, let's say, right? The Erin Blanchfield fight. That fight was in February of last year. So it's less than a year ago, not all that long ago. Blanchfield hurts her bad and eventually finishes her with the head kick, as you mentioned. But she pulls off that huge upset over Chelsea Hackett on Contender Series. But when you rewatch that fight, it's the same thing. Chelsea Hackett seriously has her hurt. But she's able to rally back. She gets the fight to the ground. She's able to lean on her ground game a little bit, eventually mounts her, and finishes Chelsea Hackett. But no doubt that the striker had a lot of success in that spot as well, just wasn't able to get the finish. But I think if Figueiredo, she's going to be faster. She's going to stay to the outside, and she should just chip away at her. Leonardo's trained by her husband out of Louisiana. It's a smaller setup. She's been a training partner with Andrea Lee. I still think she's still green. She makes a lot of mistakes. And there's no really one area that she does extremely well. Her best thing is that she's strong, and she's aggressive, and she's willing to come forward. But that shouldn't be to her benefit here. It should play into the hand of Modafferi. So I've got her to win straight up, but this is a prop show, baby. So I'm going with that inside the distance by TKO specifically, which is sitting at +255.
Personally, I also took a shot on the under 2.5 at that +175 mark. I think even if Leonardo somehow finds success on the ground, she might be able to put that purple belt of jiu-jitsu to use. But I truly think that we're going to see Figueiredo go out there and decapitate this woman with the head kick. All right, let's keep things moving along. We got Umar Nurmagomedov against Sergey Morozov. If most people remember, this fight was originally supposed to take place at UFC 254. Same night as Khabib. Obviously, Umar and Khabib have a relation to it. I believe they're relatives. Khabib, if I'm not mistaken, will be in his corner too. We're seeing him post a lot during this fight week that he is with Umar, helping him cut weight and helping him do all the things that you need to do to get ready for a fight. Now, -525 is a little bit of a stretch for me, even though he has the last name of Nurmagomedov. Doesn't necessarily mean that it might also actually come with a little bit of a tax, if you want to call it that, given his name value. Sergey Morozov, a former M1 champion. He even had a very close fight with a hot prospect in the UFC right now in Movsar Evloev. That was a very, very close fight. They had a back and forth exchange. Eventually, Evloev was able to get him out of there with a choke. Very interesting finish as well to that because he didn't really tap, but it looked pretty deep enough that he was going to go out regardless. I feel like Morozov has the advantage when it comes to the hands, but in terms of an overall striking game, I like what I see from Umar. Spinning back kicks, kick-heavy attack, but obviously, don't get it twisted. The guy wants to get the fight to the ground, do some good work from on top. But I feel like this line is just a little bit too wide. So that's why you guys come here for the props, right? So what I'm trying to look at is I don't really feel like we're going to see much of a finish from either guy here. The over 2.5 is -210. That's a little bit chalky still. -175 for the fight goes to decision. I can't really get my finger on which side I'm leaning here. I do like Nurmagomedov via decision, which is currently sitting around, what is that? Nurmagomedov decision is wins inside the distance. Why can't I figure that out?
-125.
-125. God damn. But yeah, no, I think that's the spot you want to go with. You don't want to play the -525 on a guy like this, right? So I like Nurmagomedov via decision -125. That's a solid spot. What's the side that you're leaning on?
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think, should he be the favorite in the spot? Yes, right? Should he be a minus 500 favorite in the spot? No, but because he carries that famous last name, especially in a fight in Abu Dhabi, it's hard to go against him. He's undefeated. He's 25 years old. He's training with the best guys in the world. Let's be real. He's got guys like Islam Makhachev in his corner. Guys got like Khabib Nurmagomedov in his corner. He's just got a plethora of talent to work with. And the problem here is that he pulled out of his last fight against Morozov due to a staph infection that caused him to get really sick and run up a fever. Prior to that, he had pulled out of another fight with Morozov due to injury. It's hard to gauge where he's at because he's fought a lot of lower level guys and he does get the win and he does look really good. But to say that he's a minus 500 favorite over a guy who's got 19 pro fights, he's the former M1 global champion. He's fought in the better level of competition. He's fought in 5-rounders. He's on a 5-fight winning streak. His losses are to guys like Movsar Evloev, like, Josh Reddinghouse. Okay, that's another story. But to say that he's that big of a favorite, he's still young. He's still 25. We seen what happened when Abubakar Nurmagomedov came to the UFC, and it was like, oh man, he's the shits, and he's going to crush people, and maybe he will, right? And we see when Magomed Ankalaev came to the UFC against Paul Craig, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, you're new to the UFC. It's the bright lights. It's a different style of fighting. You're fighting in a cage now. Something goes eerie. So again, when it's minus 500 anybody, you have to have that second look. And when you look at Morozov, he's got all the skills in the world. Again, former M1 champion. His striking checks out. He's got a lot of power. Big finishing ability. If he hits you, he can definitely hurt you. Cardio seems to be okay. He definitely gets tired in 5-round fights, but that's because they're pushing a high pace, and this is just a 3-round fight. So theoretically, he should be okay. He's got a lot that he brings to the table. He's also 31 years old. He's got the 19 pro fights. Like, he's got the more experience, the veteranship. But I mean, Umar Nurmagomedov is being set up here by the UFC that they know that this is one of their cash cow names in the sport, especially in Abu Dhabi. If it's a close fight, you would expect those rounds to go to Umar. He is the better wrestler. And the thing is that if this ends up being a striking battle, I give the power advantage to Morozov. But Umar's got the technique. He's just got such a versatile kicking game. He kicks straight up the middle. He can go to the teep kick to the body. He loves to do that front kick. And the question mark kicks as well. Like, he's very tricky with that. He controls distance really well. And when he doesn't feel like striking anymore, then he can close the distance and get you down. The last time we've seen Morozov, when he was taking on Josh Reddinghouse in the rematch, Reddinghouse still had a lot of spots on him, man. He still managed to take him down. He still managed to take his back. He almost choked him out with a rear naked choke. Morozov was able to escape. If Umar takes him down, he should be able to control him as well. The main thing is, though, is that we're not talking about a minus 500 favorite. It just doesn't make any sense. So we are trying to chase that prop. On one hand, the Umar inside the distance props seem tremendous when you consider Morozov's got 3 pro losses, and 2 of them are inside the distance. Josh Reddinghouse, of all people, knocked him out in the first round, and he also got choked out by Movsar Evloev in the third. So is that a path of victory for Umar? But not really. The more you look at Umar, he is more of a decision guy. I mean, as far as like his last 7 fights, let's say, when he's fighting for Fight Nights Global, he appears very green. He wins most of his fights there by decision. Then he fought that one-time Battle of Volka. It's a decision. Then he signed 1 fight with PFL. He wins a decision. Goes back to Battle of Volka in Russia, wins a decision. The 2 finishes that he shows, right? This Taras Gristevich from Ukraine, the rear naked choke, he's got a really ballooned up record, and he was a striker. So it was just a really bad matchup. Umar was coming in to win. Umar did win. He got a submission. The other one against Brian Gonzalez. Imagine fighting 5-6 guys on the Argentinian regional scene with losing records, and then going to Russia and taking on Umar Nurmagomedov. He brought him to lose. Those guys are getting finished. But everybody else is lasting a decision. And Morozov is not walkover opponents. So even though he does show losses inside, I would, if I was chasing a prop, I don't love this fight on a bet standpoint, like for props, but if I was chasing a prop, I would say Umar beats him by decision. And that's minus 125. Not the greatest price tag out there. If you're really chasing a prop, you go that inside the distance and hope that he's able to hurt this guy a little bit standing, take him down and submit him with a rear naked choke or something, second or third round. But I think the safe bet would be Umar by decision. So that's my only lean here.
Let's not forget Shavkat Rakhmonov, a teammate of Mr. Sergey Morozov, did pull off a victory and an upset over Alex Cowboy Oliveira way back at UFC 254, the same card that they were supposed to be fighting at. So maybe he takes a little bit of that into this fight and tries to use it as a bit of motivation. But I still got Umar by decision, just as you do as well, too. All right, let's keep things moving along. We got Mike Beast Boy Davis making his return after an extended layoff against Mason Jones, a.k.a. Champ over there at Cage Warriors. Now, when I dove into this fight, I started off with the Mason Jones side because I didn't really know much about this guy, so I wanted to dig in and see, okay, what are we dealing with compared to what we have with Mike Davis? Now, decent striking, black belt in judo, brown belt in jiu-jitsu. I didn't mind what I saw from him. Solid durability as well too. Can take a punch, it seems. And then moves up to 170 in his last fight to try to take that second belt and secure a UFC contract. And that's exactly what he did. Then you turn on the Mike Davis tape and then you're like, okay, things might be a little bit interesting here for Mason Jones, because I feel as though the striking and speed and explosiveness of Mike Davis might be able to give Mr. Mason Jones a little bit of issues here. I don't think he's fought anybody to the level of a Mike Davis who's able to put punches together the way that he does. His kicking game is insane too. He has a great question mark kick as well too. I feel as though Mike Davis's speed, agility, and his explosiveness might be a little bit too much for Mason. Like I said, I like what I see from Mason in terms of his hands, decent hands, good durability, and can lean on his judo and his grappling when he needs to. But Mike Davis, solid wrestler himself too. Obviously didn't really get to show up much against Gilbert Burns. Very tough task to come in on short notice against a guy like Gilbert Burns and then get put out in the second round. And then obviously after that, we know Mike Davis goes in there and gives Thomas Gifford the beating of a lifetime. I know Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar were really bad, but Thomas Gifford took a really bad ass whooping that night. And then just to show for it, Thomas Gifford, the next fight, goes on to the regional scene and loses by knockout in 33 seconds. So I think he took a little bit of damage in the fight, just a tad bit. But I do like Mike Davis here. I do think that he could actually even finish Mason Jones, as I don't believe that he's going to be ready for the speed and the striking technical abilities of Mike Davis. We've seen him hurt and rocked by Sodiq Yusuff in the past, and that was a fight where he came in as a heavy underdog. Nobody really knew about Sodiq Yusuff. There was a lot of hype on Mike Davis. Sodiq Yusuff, we know what he's about in the UFC now. There's a reason he was able to go out there and spring that upset. But I still think that Mike Davis has a good amount of potential. I think he could be a top 20 guy as well too. And I think that Mason Jones has a bright future as well. But unfortunately for his first fight in the UFC, I think he's biting off a little bit more than he can chew at this point in time. So I like Davis. I do think that he can get it done inside the distance too, even though we haven't seen Jones take an L. But I think he's going to be very flustered by the striking that's coming his way from Davis. So we got Davis by KO at plus 230, and I really like that prop myself. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, I kind of got to go the other way. I like Mason Jones, and it's nothing against Mike Davis. Mike Davis lives up to the nickname. This guy is definitely a beast. And if you look at his run on Contender Series, shows up and he's got to take on Sodiq Yusuff, right? Who maybe people don't know at the time, but is a badass. And that fight, in my opinion, still to this day, doesn't matter how many seasons they've had, is one of the best Contender Series fights I've ever seen. Both these guys look UFC caliber by a mile, and here they are fighting for $5,000 in a contract. Mike Davis comes out on the wrong end of a close decision, which he did lose. And it's like, no contract for him. He had to go to the regional scene. He wins a couple fights. And then it's like, hey, kid, I got an opportunity for you. You can make a short notice debut in the UFC, up a weight class against Gilbert Burns. And the guy goes almost 2 rounds of Gilbert Burns, but eventually, reality sets in and he gets submitted by Gilbert, which is very understandable. And then the only other fight after that is Thomas Gifford, which, yeah, he absolutely tunes him and looks fantastic, but I think most people would have looked good against Thomas Gifford, so it's hard to pull anything away from that. But then that's it. He hasn't fought in 13 months. He's had a couple fights fall through. He was initially training at Tiger Muay Thai full time. He had won a contract there. Like, he went over there, did one of those Tiger Muay Thai tryouts, got a full year of training. But once the pandemic happened and COVID happened, he had to come home. I'm sure he's going to be in great shape. This guy always shows up in tremendous shape. His striking is awesome. As you mentioned, his wrestling, pretty damn good. Cardio, really good. Always going to be ready. And I agree that, he should be the favorite. Now, minus 160 is a lot more, something that you can stomach. But keep in mind, this line open, Mike Davis was a minus 300 favorite versus plus 250 on Mason Jones. And I don't know if it was European money. I don't know if it was people knowing something on the inside. I don't know if it's people realizing that's way too big of a price tag. But it's like big time money has been hammered in on Mason Jones. And again, you look at Mason Jones, and there's a lot to like. He's only 25 years old. He's already a judo black belt. As far as the wrestling advantage from Mike Davis, it's still going to be tried. It's going to be hard to take this guy down with the judo black belt. So BJJ brown belt, you don't get to see his submissions a whole lot, but it's obviously something he's worked on. And he's still young. As far as his run in Cage Warriors, it's been flawless, 10-0. Has looked extremely good. His boxing is very good. His output is very good. And then this is the thing to factor, right? Mike Davis hasn't fought in those 13 months, and that's where Mason Jones has been doing his best work. I mean, the pandemic happens, and he gets that Joe McCulkin fight literally right at the beginning, March 20th, goes out there. It's scheduled for a 5-round fight at 155, knocks him out in the first round, looks tremendous, and then comes back 6 months later, gets a second fight and moves up to 170, fights for the welterweight title against Adam Proctor, 12-1 prospect. And Adam Proctor had been looking good up to that point. What does Mason Jones go do? He goes out there and he absolutely tears through with another first-round knockout. Now you can think, oh, geez, well, this guy's all first-round knockouts, and Mike Davis is a good striker as well. But, like, he can fight longer, and that's what he's going to need. Because this fight, in my opinion, I know you see Davis knocking him out. My opinion, this thing's going the distance. You got two very good strikers, very smart strikers. The technical boxing advantage is going to go to Mason Jones. I would give volume, slight advantage to Mason Jones. The kick game is Mike Davis. The power is Mike Davis. The wrestling is Mike Davis. But, the overall ground game and grappling could be pretty much standstill. So we should just have a really fun, entertaining 15 minutes of stand-up, and it goes decision. So Mason Jones, like I said, money's coming in on him. I like him. I thought he was a good underdog play. And because I think this fight's going the distance, especially if Mike Davis wins, maybe he knocks him out. If Mason Jones wins, I don't think he's knocking out Mike Davis, who is cast iron. We've seen it on display many of times. Like the guy's very durable. So if he wins, then it would be a decision. So if I'm taking that dog, and I'm going to furthermore, this is a prop show, taking that dog by decision, which is how I think he wins, it's plus 315. And to me, that's a really nice price tag here. Go out there, outwork this guy, land the volume, and hopefully get a close decision in Abu Dhabi. Plus 315, nice price tag. So that would be my prop for this fight. Not a ton of confidence in it because I just can't overlook Mike Davis, what he brings to the table. But there's been a lot of reports of Mike Davis not really wanting to fight. He's really good at it, and he doesn't mind taking time off, and he doesn't mind. And if you follow him on Instagram and on social media, he's more of a video game guy. But fighting is his appearance. Whereas Mason Jones is this is all he's ever done. Started training, he's 4 years old. How else do you get a judo black belt, BJJ brown belt, and have sick boxing skills by 25? This is all he's ever done. This is all he's ever known. Mike Davis admittedly got into this because of bullying, and he never really wanted to be a fighter, but people pushed him in that direction. So, listen, now I'm only speculating and talking narrative, which is not the greatest way to break down a fight, but it all leads me to believe that Mason Jones as an underdog has a shot, and so I'm going to take a dog or pass here.
Yeah, just to note also, Mike Davis, like you said, was scheduled to fight in February against Giga Chikadze, pulled out due to an undisclosed injury. Then they rescheduled him for the first card back from that COVID situation in May, and they pulled him out a couple of days, I believe a week before, due to weight cutting issues. So they didn't want him to cut further weight. That's when I believe Erwin Rivera stepped in to fight Giga Chikadze that night. But yeah, the layoff is a little bit of a concern for me for Mike Davis, who is a guy that needs to really get those repetitions and needs that activity to keep his sharpness intact, in my opinion, to keep his speed and keep his game together. But yeah, you like Mason Jones by decision. I like Beast Boy by KO. Let's see how that plays out. All right, let's keep things moving along. We got the debut of Deiveson Figueiredo's brother. We got Francisco Figueiredo jumping into the UFC as a minus 150 favorite. He's taking on Jerome Rivera at plus 130. Now with Jerome Rivera, that's a guy that I backed last time around against Tyson Nam. I thought his output and his ability to keep moving and staying away from the power was going to be able to get him the victory over Tyson Nam. He won that first round on all three judges' scorecards, and then he throws a lazy leg kick and gets knocked out by Tyson Nam, who sometimes just needs that one punch to put you out, and that's exactly what Jerome Rivera found out that night. I still think that Rivera has a little bit of talent that he can show within the UFC. My issue here with Francisco Figueiredo, I'm just having trouble finding the tape on him. I only was able to find that one fight, his last fight, where he went to a draw. Probably the most blatant cage grab I've ever seen in my life. Thank God that referee was like, you know what, screw you. We're taking the point right away. I'm not even going to bother rewarding you. That was a horrible, because who knows what could have happened if that guy got the takedown. Maybe that could have led to a potential finish, right? So I'm glad that they took the point away. Unfortunately for Souza, it ends up still going to a draw. And I believe, obviously, Deiveson Figueiredo has a little bit to do with Francisco being in the UFC coming off of a draw. Now, he doesn't look like Deiveson in the fact that he doesn't throw with as much power, in my opinion. I feel like Davison's a little bit sharper and quicker. I feel like the takedown defense is a bit of a question for Francisco. He throws more pot shots than he does combinations, in my opinion, but I need to see more than 15 minutes from him, right? So I can't confidently pick a side here. If you are putting a gun to my head right now, based on the facts that I have in front of me, I'm going with the Jerome Rivera via decision at plus 230, as I feel like he could have the output. That's one thing I did see in that fight, is that he could be pretty much out volumed, and I believe that Jerome Rivera could be that guy too. Also, if Jerome Rivera wants to get this fight to the ground, I think that avenue is opening for him too, so that he can get his jiu-jitsu going as well. How are you seeing this? Again, I'm going with Rivera via decision plus 230. What about you?
Yeah, you know what? If it wasn't for another famous last name, then who knows what happens here? I mean, this is another line that's been shifting, and I think largely it's because people figure out, oh man, Figueiredo is his brother. It's actually his younger brother by 2 years on top of that. But he opened up as a plus 105, respectably so. Jerome Rivera, you've seen a lot more from him. We know that he's got decent cardio. We know that he's fast. We know that he's one of those scrambly, agile type fighters. He's got a good, wily game, ground game. Striking's a work in progress. His durability is definitely a question. When you look at all 3 of his pro losses, they have come inside the distance. Tyson Nam absolutely lit him up with a punch, KO'd him. Roberto Sanchez on the LFA scene, submitted with the Narbar. Roberto Sanchez didn't fare well in the UFC. I think he's only fought once or twice. Didn't have a good run, but he was a submission whiz on the regional scene. And then his other losses, he dislocated his arm trying to post off a takedown. So maybe a bit of bad luck, but he's young and he is getting better. But his Contender Series fight, that's the one that I'm head scratching. I don't know how he won. I don't know how the judges awarded him the fight. Surely they must have gotten the guys mixed up. I don't know how Jerome Rivera ended up getting a decision, but it was a fun fight. He gets a contract out of it, and they do him no favors by letting him fight Tyson Nam on short notice. So there's still a lot of C out of him. Whereas with Figueiredo, again, Francisco is not his brother. To put things into perspective, that guy, Eduardo Souza, who he had the draw with in his last fight, well, a couple things. First of all, that fight was 15 months ago. Yeah. Second of all, let's start his story with the first time he fought Eduardo Souza, which was back in 2017. As he's fighting Eduardo Souza in jungle fights, is the same year that his brother Davidson, 2 years older than him, fair, debuts in the UFC. And you see from 2017 right through to 2019, all that Davidson's accomplishing, and yet Francisco's not doing anything. He lost a split decision to Eduardo Souza, and then late in 2017, he wins over a 6-12 opponent, and then takes the rest of the year off, comes back once in 2018, beat Manuel dos Santos, came back once in 2019, beat Eduardo Souza, and taking another 15 months. Again, what do we know about this guy? He's just taking all this time off. One would love to believe that he's training hard and he's right alongside his brother, and he is the Antonina Shevchenko to the Valentina, so to speak. But Antonina is actually the older sister. She's kind of like my sister's keeper. I had to go through this path, and you could see the mistakes and you could learn from those mistakes. Whereas this guy, I don't know. I don't know if he's just kind of been Davidson's go-to guy that will pursue your career, we won't pursue mine. I don't know. I looked into it. They run a gym together in Brazil. And by the way, they look nothing alike. And I don't want to talk.
Kind of. like the shape of their face looks the same, but obviously the complexion is different. But I don't know. I see it a little bit.
Hey, do you see it? Yeah, I don't know.
I see it.
I thought skin color was like me and you. It was
You're right on that part, but I mean the facial features, I see it.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So anyway,
it's not like Antonina and Valentina. That is just there is something definitely going on with that.
They don't look anything alike.
Not at all. But Figueiredo brothers, I think they do a little bit. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah, at least they fit the Russian spy narrative. That
Oh, you went mute on us, Cody. While we get Cody get his mic back, there we go. You're good.
I don't know why I muted it. Yeah. As soon as I said Russian spy, they were like, "Kill this feed, kill this feed."
Yeah, exactly.
He knows too much.
Shut this guy off. Shut
this guy off. Oh, if he's talking about Francisco Figueiredo, yeah. Okay, let him get back to it. Yeah, if he had even a modicum of what his brother has, then surely he'd go out there and knock out Jerome Rivera in the first round. He's also a BJJ black belt. That's at least what he is accredited. But again, we don't know how good his submission game is. As far as the power, it certainly doesn't have Davidson level of power. And I believe this fight's at 135 pounds. So there's a lot working against him. The 15-month layoff, that being the biggest thing. And then the talent jump, coming to the UFC and fighting the best opponent you fought in your career on relatively short notice. It's just going to be a tough task altogether. So I do see a lot of money coming in on him. I would say he's the play. I can't get a bid on if he was to win by knockout, which I think is plus 315 or something. Is a nice price tag. Or if he was to win by decision, I can't get a beat on that. Jerome Rivera, live dog, but there's just not enough dog money on it quite yet. So let's see where the line goes with Figueiredo. Let's see them on the scales come weigh-ins. And then hopefully Figueiredo gets, because listen, Davidson is a tank, but Davidson had cardio issues early in his career. He had takedown defense issues early in his career. And still to this day, he doesn't throw a ton. He has volume problems. The thing is that he doesn't need to throw a ton. If he hits you, he's like one of the GOATs at 125. His brother doesn't have the output, doesn't have the cardio, doesn't have the ground game. Rivera's going to be a hell of a test for him. So keep in mind, but this has pass on. It's a 14 fight card. You don't got to force it just because he's a famous brother. I'd like to see what he's got in his debut first.
All I got to say is we got Valentin Overeem, Alistair Overeem. We got Shogun Hua. We got Ninja Hua. We got Jim Miller. We got Dan Miller. And lastly, we got Cole Miller and Michael Miller. So if you guys know where I'm going, you guys know what I'm thinking. All right, let's keep this train rolling along. Next up, we got Dalcha Lungiambula versus Marcus Perez, who's actually taking this fight at 205 pounds, which I find to be very intriguing here. Dalcha, obviously, former EFC champion, going out there and just deading dudes more often than not. Obviously, comes into the UFC, finishes Daquan Townsend in the third round, and then goes up against Magomed Ankalaev. Not a very friendly matchup for him, and then eventually gets finished in that third round with a beautiful front kick right up the middle that stumbles him, and then Ankalaev follows up with a little bit of ground and pound. On the flip side, we got Marcus Perez coming off a knockout loss to Dricus du Plessis, another EFC product as well too. I'm kind of trying to figure out why Marcus Perez took this fight at 205 pounds. It doesn't really make too much sense, especially coming off a knockout loss back in October. I feel like this might be too quick of a turnaround. But once you really start to dig into the tape of Dalcha Lungiambula, he doesn't really have that type of knockout power that you would like. He does have knockout power, don't get me wrong, but you would expect it to be much scarier. Like, it's not like a Francis Ngannou where he just touches you and you go to sleep. You would expect it to be a little bit more. Like, there are times where he's landing on guys and guys are just kind of eating it and coming forward. There's that one, his last fight before coming to the UFC, 5-round fight against Van Zwer, I believe that guy's name was.
Andrew Van Zyl?
Yeah, and even before that, he fights Stuart Austin, gets rocked and dropped in that first round, arguably could have finished that fight. Any other referee probably could have stopped that fight. And then you see him get a knockdown in the second round, and the referee stops it quickly, and he retains his title. So I think there's a little bit of hometown cooking going on over there, especially with EFC wanting to keep Dalcha champion around. But this is an interesting fight. Now, if you give me Marcus Perez not coming off of a knockout loss, I'd be a little bit more intrigued to take that plus 115 on him, as I feel he has a little bit more of a complete game and a little bit more of an approach where he'll be able to throw more volume. One thing I always used to rag on Marcus Perez about is he used to be a fighter that just likes to entertain and not really to win per se. But in that Dricus du Plessis fight, he came out pretty hard and determined to get his hand raised that night. Unfortunately for him, throws a spinning back elbow, I believe, and that's when Dricus catches him, pretty much face plants him and gets the finish there. But if you're telling me that Perez is not completely compromised from that knockout from du Plessis, I could see him go out there and kind of just dance circles around Dalcha, land some kicks from the outside, kind of keep his distance, and kind of cruise to a decision victory here, which is why I'm kind of looking at the Perez via decision at plus 335, or even the over 1.5, if that's kind of the way that you want to go at minus 145. I think that's a solid spot too. Yeah, I got Perez here. The knockout in October is a little bit on my head. How do you see this fight though?
Okay, first and foremost, you mentioned the fight's at 205. Do you know that for sure? Because I'm under the impression it's at middleweight.
Well, unless Tapology is lying to me.
Yeah, well, yeah, that I'm not sure. Because when the fight got booked, like when Perez came in as a replacement, all the articles say it's a middleweight fight. UFC.com, not a great website, by the way. Love the product, but like the website's awful. Like they don't even list a weight. But a few other places have been listing at middleweight. And Dalcha was supposed to fight Carl Roberson at 185. So he's in game for 185. He's cool with 185. Perez would be the X factor because he's short notice, but he's a career middleweight. He would be not a very big light heavyweight at all. So I kind of
see if I can do some digging for you, and you can break this fight down, and I'll do a little bit of digging and see if I can figure that out.
Yeah, okay. So the only thing less trustworthy than Tapology is Wikipedia. They got it at middleweight. But anyways, yeah, do your digging. But main thing here is that if Dalcha does make middleweight, it would be really interesting to see what this guy looks like, because physically he is an absolute unit. You know, built like a specimen. At 205, that's 20 pounds bigger than than middleweight. So he's not just dropping a weight class by the standards of, 45 to 135 or 155 to 140, but they're all 10 pounds. He's dropping 20 pounds. And if he comes on and gets on the scales at 185 pounds, he is going to be a big, thick, strong dude. We all know about that striking. We all know about that big power. But beyond that, he's a former African judo champion, judo black belt, very hard to take off his feet. He kind of, to me, reminds me a little bit of Abdul Razak Al Hassan. And that's not a good comparison in that Razak Al Hassan's got all the credentials in the world. Absolute KO power for days, both hands, judo black belt, very hard to take down. but his cardio is not quite there, and his fight IQ is very low. And the longer the fight goes, and this guy starts to have problems, I could see Dalcha having those same problems. And if Marcus Perez minds his P's and Q's, stays to the outside and tries to work him over, then it could work for him. But I'm having the impression that I want to see weigh-ins. I want to see Dalcha get on the scales. If he makes 185, what's going to happen is Perez is not going to be able to back him up. And Perez is not really much of a volume guy himself. And so we see the last time Perez fought against Dricus du Plessis, he starts to have some spots, and then he just blindly rushes in because he thinks he has him hurt, and he ends up getting countered and, ends up getting knocked out. I think he's going to be spending most of this fight backing up, trying to evade him, trying to stay on the outside and chip away. And it'll look better in the judge's eyes, Dalcha moving forward, Dalcha throwing the bigger, heavier shots, landing a few here and there. The other thing with Perez is that he was cast iron. Nobody had finished this guy. I mean, if anything, you can punch him many times in the head, and he takes them really well. But he got folded bad against Dricus. And Dricus, excellent striker. Not the biggest power guy. So he's taking a short-ish turnaround from there, coming in here, taking on a guy that has a lot more power, is looking to put it on display. And if he doesn't get that early knockout, then where does Perez turn this fight around? Now, I do give him a ground game advantage if he was to get the fight to the ground on top, but his wrestling is awful. And he's not taking down an accredited judo champion such as Dalcha champion. So the more you think about it, you think Dalcha's probably just going to move forward and back this guy up and maybe get that decision. And so when I looked at that Dalcha by decision, it's plus 500. What I liked about that is Perez had previously never been knocked out. So now we do know it can happen. Dricus was the guy to do it. But if he's hesitant, he's on short notice, and he realizes, man, the last time it's because I got caught, it's because I ran in there. If he comes in, stays to the outside, moves around, doesn't throw a ton, which he's kind of known to do, Dalcha could also be like Razak Al-Hassan in that when the first round KO doesn't happen, the power falls off in the second and third. You mentioned the Andrew Van Zyl fight. His power fell off huge. The same thing could definitely happen here. And if Dalcha's power falls off, but he's still moving forward and he's still landing the more eye-appealing shots for the judges, this could make a decision. And he'd be the victor in said decision. Plus 500 just seemed like a very reasonable price to take it to stab at it.
Absolutely. And I do believe we got confirmation from my guy, Marcel Dorf at Big Marcel 24. He is my go-to guy for fight announcements. This fight is at 185. So it is definitely a middleweight fight. And I do recall when he was supposed to fight Carl Roberson a couple months ago, he did weigh in at 185 as well, too. I remember me and you were going back and forth about seeing how he actually looks on the scales. He made the weight. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see how he performs making that weight as well. So maybe that's a little bit of another X factor here, how he will look after having that type of weight cut, and if he's going to be able to, withstand that 50-minute matchup with Marcus Perez if he's not able to get him out of there early, right? So I still like that Perez decision. I like it a little bit more knowing that it's at 185 now as well too. Do you have any reservations now knowing that it's at 185?
185 to me was one of those things where Dalcha could be a legitimate contender at 185 pounds. We just don't know yet. We just got to see how he comes down and makes that weight. And we've seen other guys in the past, like the more weight you drop down, it's not necessarily to your benefit. But guys like Jared Cannonier fights at heavyweight. It's like, guy's got power, but he's limited. Fights at light heavyweight. And it's like, he only lost to the best guys, by the way. But it's like, he seems like he's got more power and he's a little bit better. And then you see him at middleweight and you're like, oh, good God. Like, why were you not here all along, right? And so maybe this is another makings of that. Maybe he just hasn't really been fighting the same weight classes and he's going to look awesome. And Marcus Perez is not by any stretch of the imagination a top 25 talent. So if Dalcha comes out looking good, it's going to be a problem. I'd say let's wait until we see the weigh-ins, but who knows? I mean, the reservations are he's got him cut 20 pounds. He's a little bit older. He has a ton of muscle on him. I don't know what he's going to look like, but I think it'll be a fun fight. That's the side I'd be leaning towards.
Also, just another note, the fight that we spoke about before between Jerome Rivera and Francisco Figueiredo is actually at 125 as well. So Tapology is really dropping the ball. My guy, Big Marcel, is going to go over there and make those fixes for us. But yeah, that is a 125-pound fight, as well as Perez and Dalcha is going to be at 185, just so you guys know. All right, let's keep the train moving along. A fight that we know for sure is at 125 pounds is Sumadarji versus Zaruk Adashev. Now, let's start off with Sumadarji, who's a guy that I wasn't really that high on coming into the UFC, and I'm not just saying that because he lost via submission to Louis Smolka, but even before that, you don't often see a fighter come into the UFC off of a loss, and that's exactly what we got in Sumadarji. Goes out there, gets tapped by Louis Smolka, and then after that, a little bit of a low sing, and then everybody starts to hop onto him. He goes out there and beats Andre Sukumtov via decision. Then he goes out there and knocks out our guy, Malcolm Gordon, in 30, 40 seconds. It didn't even seem like they should have been in the cage together. But now I'm looking at Sumudaerji, who's minus 470, and everybody seems to be riding the Sumudaerji wave. He looks like he has a ton of potential. The day of this fight, he's going to be turning 25 years old as well, too. So he has a ton of time to really fill out and flush out that potential and skill set that he's acquiring. And I'm a big fan of the dude. He does a good job of maintaining distance, has a nasty straight down the middle to really pop his opponents and really get them moving backwards. Great kicking game. Again, really manages his distance very well, too. And I think that's where it's going to get very difficult here for Zaruk Adashev, who's going to have to close that distance to try to make it a little bit of a tougher of a fight and try to get his hand raised here. Now, Zaruk, only 5 fights in his MMA career. I believe he was 16-3 as a kickboxer as well, too. Fought for Glory a couple times. And people always have that narrative of like, oh, he's a Glory kickboxer. He's going to be a great kickboxer. And then he goes out there and gets deaded by Tyson Nam in 20 seconds, right? I believe I don't know if he'll get deaded immediately by Sumudaerji here, but I think he's going to have a ton of difficulty closing that distance. Now, one thing that he does try to implement more often than not in his game is his leg kicking game. And that's kind of what he got countered by with Tyson Nam and got put out there. And I feel like Su and his coaches, they need to know that that's kind of how he approaches his game. So anytime he throws a leg kick, let's fire it straight right down the middle, and let's just see if it lands on his chin and how he reacts to it. Now, there's often times where guys get knocked out pretty quickly, and then we're just automatically thinking, okay, these guys are going to get knocked out in every single fight. The most recent one that I'm thinking about is Jake Collier, got deaded by Tom Aspinall, and everybody's automatically writing him off and saying, okay, he has a shitty chin. Now, Zaruk Adashev, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that Tyson Nam just has the touch of death. And we all know that. Just ask Jerome Rivera, who's fighting later on in this, or earlier in this card, right?
Just ask Tyson Nam, who's fighting on this card.
that too, right? So I could see this going to a decision with Sumudaerji kind of just picking him apart from the outside and maintaining that distance. I don't know. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to go out there and knock this guy out. Minus 470. Absolutely insane line here. Again, we were just not too high on him a couple fights ago. Zaruk Adashev, 3-2. I feel like we should have got him a little bit more groomed before he came over to the UFC. I still like the Sumudaerji side. I'm getting a hard time in terms of feeling out which prop to truly go with here. So I'm hoping that you can help me out here. I'm going with Su. I just don't know which method. What do you got?
Yeah, well, it's a good fight for sure. It's going to be a good test in that it's a striker's delight type of affair. With Zaruk Adashev, though, I think you pretty much nailed it. He's too young for a UFC career. He's a great striker, 16-3 as a pro, fought for Glory. You watch those Glory fights, they're not spectacular, but he is a good striker. But coming into the UFC, it's a different animal altogether, right? Whereas he's like a classically trained kickboxer. His defense is very much kickboxing oriented, where you have a 12-ounce glove or an 8-ounce glove at the worst case scenario, covering the majority of your face. But he takes a fight on short notice, up at 135 pounds against Tyson Nam, who, likes to fight at 125 as well. Don't get me wrong. But main thing is that it's a tough fight to come in as your debut. You're 3-1. And that's when you see the difference between MMA striking and that kickboxing, because he got hit once flush by Tyson Nam, and he is absolutely crumpled over, which, again, is no discredit. I mean, Tyson Nam has knocked out fantastic fighters, Eduardo Dantas, Ali Bagatinov. You see the power that this guy possesses. It's like, okay, it's no knock on you. It's just, what has Adashev done in between to make himself that much better? With Sumudaerji, if Sumudaerji doesn't take this fight to the ground, it ends up being a striking battle. He's got a good skill set as well. Good southpaw striker. He's got a 7-inch reach advantage here over Adashev, who's 5'5" with a 65-inch reach. So his 72-inch reach should definitely come into play for sure. The other thing with Adashev is a flyweight, right? We know that this fight's at flyweight. And when he debuted against Tyson Nam, they're both flyweights. But he was like, you know what? I'm short notice. Let's do it at 35. Tyson Nam, we'll fight at any weight class available, by the way. But, cool at 35. He likes to fight there as well. So he takes the fight at 35. And Adashev missed weight, came in at 138. So what, did he have a bad weight cut? Is that why he got knocked out? Was it a bad camp? Did he have no camp? You can't take away that much from that Tyson Nam fight. We just got to look at the fact that we've got a more polished kickboxer in Adashev than Sumudaerji. Yeah, there's that big reach advantage for Sumudaerji, but Adashev could keep things interesting. The money line seems off. However, I agree that Sumudaerji probably gets the victory here, and that he should probably
I don't know. I want to chase that decision prop for Sumajiri. The fight goes the distance is -105 as well. And that if this is just two strikers, that KO shot doesn't land, maybe they're just going to go 15 minutes back and forth. But you go back to the Andre Sukmantath fight for Sumajiri. And there's a fight where he's fighting another striker, and it's going to be Striker's Delight again. And for the first 2 rounds, that's all it is. It's striker. Sumajiri's the better striker. He hurts him standing. Again, he's very, very crafty from the southpaw stance. And it's just like Sukmantath doesn't have an answer for him. But in the 3rd round, he ends up taking Sukmantath down. And that's when you see, oh, kid's been working on his ground game big time. This could be a great spot for him that he can strike with Adashev. He doesn't got to worry. Adashev's a good striker, but not a big power striker. So he can play around there, get hit a couple times, and then eventually realize, you know what, I'd like to take this fight to the ground now. Take it to the ground and get that finish as well. So I got Sumajiri to get the victory. I think the money line's a little blown out, so I would chase it inside the distance prop. But again, part of me thinks that it could go the distance as well. I don't want to write off Adashev off one bad performance. But facts are facts. He's 3-2 in his MMA career. All of his wins were over very low-level guys in Bellator. And think about this, my friend. He won 3 straight fights for Bellator, right? Debuts with them, he's 0-1. He wins 3 straight fights for them. He's a glory kickboxer, 16-3. They didn't re-sign him. They let him go. They let him go, and the UFC picked him up as a short-notice call-in guy who lasted 33 seconds. Now he's getting a second go-around. So maybe I am overvaluing him. But I think that he just looked bad in that debut. Similar to Rafael Fiziev, who got knocked out in his debut in 90 seconds. You know, guy is a legitimate striker. He wasn't comfortable. It's the bright lights. Like sometimes you got to get your feet wet. He was able to rebound and come back. Maybe this is the same thing. As far as him fighting can opponent, with Giga Chikadze, all we talked about was that Giga had only fought can opponents. Yeah, he's a glory kickboxer, but he's got no power. But it's like there's levels to this. And this guy is a credible glory level kickboxer versus Sumajiri, who you mentioned. You know, had lost his fight prior to coming to the UFC. Then got subbed by Smolka. His 2 wins, Sukmantath no longer with the promotion. And his last fight with Malcolm Gordon. Shout out to my boy Malcolm Gordon. Probably not going to be with the promotion very much longer. -500 as a money line pick. Like it's 450, I think. But still, you know what I'm saying. Like it just seems like people are giving him a little too much love.
For sure. Speaking about chalk, let's keep things moving along. We got Ricky Simon coming in at -450 against Gaetano Perello, who's coming in at +360, a Belgian fighter. And I did a little bit of tape studying on this guy, and it kind of reminds me of a Daniel Tamor kind of fighter where he has decent Muay Thai and decent kickboxing, not much off of his back, unfortunately, and doesn't seem to have the greatest gas tank either. And this seems like a picture-perfect matchup for Ricky Simon to stay busy, to build on top of his win over Ray Borg last time around. I just don't see how Perello is able to make this fight competitive whatsoever. And the spot that I'm really looking at is the Simone inside the distance. We currently got +155 on that. And I think this is one of those instances where we see Simone take this fight to the ground pretty much at will, whenever he wants, and kind of just pass guard as easy as possible and either get a submission or a TKO. That's where I was having a little bit of trouble. I wanted to get fancy with it. I wanted to give you a KO or a submission prop, but I just don't know which one. It could be either or here. I just don't see much resistance here from his opponent. I think the guy is just completely outmatched. He's lost to much worse opponents in the past 2. His last 2 victories, one was via doctor stoppage, where the cut wasn't that bad. I'm not sure if you saw that fight, but the cut really wasn't that bad, and they ended up stopping the fight. And then the next fight, the guy just did not even want to be in there. Like the guy was just sitting up against the cage and just eating leg kicks for days, and then finally gets put down by a liver shot. That doesn't impress me when you have a guy that just looks terrified for his life for being in there. It's similar to Pamela Gonzalez a couple of weeks ago when she fought the UFC newcomer Jocelyn Edwards. You know, you don't make a name off yourself off of fighting somebody as bad as that person. So I think Perello is completely outmatched here. I just don't see a way that he pulls it off. Maybe a Hail Mary KO. Like we saw Uriah Faber pull off a KO over Ricky Simon 3 fights ago. And Faber, let's be honest, not really a KO artist, right? So that might have you a little bit giving you pause on taking Ricky Simon here, but the guy's takedown defense just does not look good. And I feel like this is a picture-perfect matchup for Simon to go out there and get a super dominant victory and hopefully get back in there and fight guys that he should be fighting, like the Brian Kelleher's and people up in that range, not a UFC newcomer like this guy. So I like Simone inside the distance, +155. Again, I wish I could get a little bit more fancy and give you a KO or sub, which are both around that +400 mark. So, choose what side you want, but I would rather cover both and take that +155. How are you feeling about this? You think this guy's as bad as I think he is, or what?
I don't think he's all that bad. I mean, he's just not maybe the most well-rounded MMA fighter, but his striking is legit. I mean, he's another guy that's just predominantly a striker. As far as competing in kickboxing and Muay Thai, like he's done it all, and he's had a lot of success. He's won a lot of small little regional titles that he keeps in a shelf in his apartment, I'm sure. But as far as the bright lights of MMA, he's got 20 fights, and he just hasn't really fought anybody outside of relatively low-level guys in the European regional scene. He does show 11 KO victories of his 15 wins, however, and an additional 3 submissions. Ricky Simone's got this guy outgunned for sure. He's got a better game plan. He's got way better wrestling. He's got way better cardio. He's got it all. The one thing Ricky Simone doesn't have is that good of a chin. You mentioned the Uriah Faber fight once where Ricky Simone was like a 6-1 favorite over Uriah Faber. There was no reason the UFC was putting this matchup together. You got old man, 40-year-old Uriah Faber against the rising up-and-comer Ricky Simone, who everybody was really high on at the time. And yet Faber comes out there, smashes him with an overhand right, and then down she goes. Prior to that, he had also lost as a 4-1 favorite over Anderson Dos Santos on Titan FC card. And I mean, yeah, it's a rear naked choke submission loss, but he got hit and he got hurt seriously bad by Anderson Dos Santos of all people, who eventually just took him to the ground and submitted him on the basis that he was hurt at that point. Ricky Simone has looked really good in there. He's looked somewhat suspect at times with his striking because he's so short. He has such a short reach that he pulls his punches a little bit. He comes up short. I could see a world in where he got caught with a counter shot. Once you're hurt, once you're scrambling, once the guy's just on you raining down punches, maybe you're going to recover, but the ref jumps in and stops it. But there's a big discrepancy in the ground skills. And by this point, it's 2021. And pretty much since 1999, we've known that the ground game wins all these fights, man. So listen, again, is there a world where he goes out there and he catches Ricky Simone? Yes, I think it's possible. I think Ricky Simone, one of his biggest downfalls fighting elite level competition is that when he takes them down, they get back up. And the more they get back up, the more that they're going to have these chances to expose that chin. And these guys, the higher you go up, top 15, this is murderer's row, toughest division in the sport. These guys are going to capitalize. But against a guy who's got 20 fights and is still very green with the ground game, Ricky Simone should eat this guy up, right? He should have a feast on him. There's something in the back of my gut that's like, as a 5-1 favorite, Ricky Simone has let us down a couple times as a sizable favorite. 4-1 over Anderson Dos Santos, 4-1 over Faber. He's 5-1 here. Is he going to be the guy that shits in the apple pie? Is that chin going to let us down? All possible. But again, if he just goes right out there and just shoots takedown after takedown and just grinds this guy down, tires him out, he should definitely have his way.
I don't think he even needs to set out the takedown. I think he could just bull rush him in there, push him up against the cage, or even just blast double this guy and get him down and do whatever he wants with him, really. That's kind of the way that I'm looking at it. All right, let's move it along. We got a fight that was actually supposed to happen last weekend between Omari Akhmedov and Tom Breese. We got minus 160 on the Tom Breese and plus 140 on the Russian Omari Akhmedov. The spot that I liked here before, and I still kind of do like it at this point in time, though I only believe the finish come from one side. I like the under 2.5 plus 135. I think Breese absolutely has Omari Akhmedov beat on the feet here. We know what Akhmedov brings on the feet. It's a winging, hooking style, blitzing style, kind of like what you see from most wrestlers. They don't really set it up much. They don't try to jab their way in or anything like that. They just throw a hook out there and hope that's enough to close the distance and then try to get that wrestling game going. I think Tom Breese is going to absolutely have him beat in terms of, hopefully he can have him beat in terms of keeping the distance and just picking him apart from outside. And then I think eventually the striking is going to catch up to Akhmedov here, and we see Breese potentially get a KO finish. So KO for Breese is plus 225. I think that's a solid spot. Whereas Akhmedov, you got to think that his path to victory would be to grapple his way to a victory with a decision, plus 235. Now I've seen people out there questioning the durability of a Tom Breese, but does Omari Akhmedov really scream finisher to you? Like the guy is more of a grappler, try to push you up against the cage, take you to the ground. His ground and pound really isn't super devastating. We did see Tom Breese obviously get finished by Brendan Allen up against the cage, and I thought that was a very awkward position to get out of. And I'm not sure if he'll find himself in the same position there, but I thought that was a very unfortunate finish for him. And I kind of have a hard time seeing Akhmedov landing himself in the same position. We know Brendan Allen, in my opinion, is a much better jiu-jitsu player than Omari. Obviously, Omari being a better wrestler. But I feel like Brendan, being the better jiu-jitsu player, was able to get that type of position on Tom Breese. So Tom Breese, I'm not, he's a striker, but he's definitely working on his jiu-jitsu as well too. He's done a couple competitions. I think he rolled for Polaris as well too a couple times. So he's definitely trying to round out his game. And I truly believe Tom Breese is like a top 10, top 15 kind of guy if he can get this in check. You know what I mean? It's all about the mental game for him. We've seen him pull out of fights the day of the fight. I'm trying to remember who he was supposed to fight, but literally the day of the fight, there's just like, you know what? I'm not going out there. I'm done. And then he's had to pull out a ton of fights. But then when you match him up against guys like Daniel Kelly, he's like, yeah, I'll go out there and put this old man away, right? But now he's really got to get it going. If he really wants to make a stamp in the UFC and be known for somebody in his pro MMA career, he's got to go out there and beat guys like Omari Akhmedov. So if he is 100% on his game, I feel like he could absolutely knock out Akhmedov here. Akhmedov is just too slow and stiff on the feet, in my opinion, and just doesn't have the striking technical abilities to really give Tom Breese trouble. It's going to be the grappling that catches up to Tom Breese if Akhmedov gets his hand raised. I'm going with Breese. I'm going with the KO prop as well too. What is currently plus 225, like I said. How are you seeing this fight go down?
I'm kind of leaning towards fight goes the distance. Akhmedov just got a way of slowing things down to an absolute halt. I mean, he's got a really grinding, heavy style. And at middleweight, he's that shorter, stockier guy. He's able largely to get his opponents up against the cage. Now, can he get them down? No, not always. But can he just grind them up against the cage over and over for 10 minutes? Yeah. Then after 10 minutes, he gets tired. And when he gets tired, that is your chance to capitalize. Tom Breese has just got to stay in this fight long enough to find those openings. And later in the fight, when Akhmedov starts to get tired, he should be able to hit him. But yeah, then there's all those question marks about Tom Breese. I mean, as you mentioned, he pulls out of the Ian Heinisch fight. He has like an anxiety attack in the back. You know, this is a professional fighter dealing with anxiety that prohibits him from fighting. Like the medical staff looked him over and were like, you can't fight. That's like self-triggered. After that, after the anxiety attack, he fought Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen, it's a bad position, but it was as if he was accepting the bad position. There's not a whole lot of time on the clock, and it was just kind of like, we'll see if the ref steps in or not. And the ref did step in. So it's like, okay, this guy's a shot fighter. Then he takes on KB Bular. Shout out to KB Bular, Canada's own. And he puts that all aside. You see him gaining confidence as the fight goes on. You see it like in real-time motion, kind of like Sean Strickland when he came back from the motorcycle accident. Common opponents there because he fought Sean Strickland. It's like you see the confidence build in real time where it's like, man, I am good at this. Like, oh, man, this guy's not hitting me back. Like, oh, I'm having my way. And then they start to have fun. And it's like that's what Tom Breese needs. He needs that type of fun fight. When you look at his wins, that's what they gave him. They gave him extremely winnable fights. He shows victories in the UFC over Luis Dutra Jr., who never won a fight in the UFC, fanned out really quickly and got cut. Cathal Pendred, come on, got cut. Keita Nakamura, who's actually badass, Keitaro, but, no longer with the promotion, which is a serviceable journeyman, never really beat anybody of note. The Dan Kelly fight, which was Dan Kelly's retirement fight, and his knees had been shot since his third Olympic run. It was just a really shell of himself, and that's it, man. That's it. Lost to Brandon Allen, came back to beat KB Bular, which clearly wasn't UFC ready, and he was on short notice as well. So there's not a whole lot of takeaways that you can take from him fighting elite-level competition. He's just looked good against bad guys. Oh, great boxing skills, BJJ Black Belt. He'll get a job done. Omari Akhmedov's fought a lot of tough guys, man. He had a really close fight his last time out with Chris Weidman. He's got wins over Ian Heinisch, Zach Cummings, beat up Tim Boach. Is a draw with Marvin Vettori in which he won the first 2 rounds, but he gassed out in the third and gave himself up at 10-8. This guy's got that kind of style which he can make fights close. But Tom Breese, if his back's up against the cage the whole time and he's giving up takedowns, it doesn't matter how good your grappling is. It's hard to submit a guy who doesn't have a neck. So I could see him losing the first round. I could see him losing a close second round, and then the third round turning it on and beating it on Akhmedov. If he doesn't finish him, therein lies where we got another apple pie shit, right? I don't know that I have the trust on Tom Breese just yet. I mean, technically speaking, Omari Akhmedov is a ranked fighter. And also, this is the biggest takeaway as well. You tape study all of those fights, right? He take down Abdul Razak Al-Sen is a credible judo black belt, right? Omari Akhmedov took him down 6 times. You look at Zach Cummings, Glory MMA Fitness, tough Midwestern, used to fight at light heavyweight, good wrestling, not great wrestling. Omari Akhmedov takes him down twice, controls him. Ian Heinisch, guy's got good wrestling, very solid wrestling. Went to Rikers Island, not a guy that gets taken down and put on his back a whole lot. Omari Akhmedov takes him down twice. Then that Chris Weidman fight, man. Chris Weidman's a former NCAA Division I All-American, former UFC champion. Omari Akhmedov took him down 4 times. He tested him. He grinded him. He's going from that to fighting Tom Breese, who effectively has wins over Dan Kelly and KB Bular. Oh, wait, no, he did beat Cathal Pendred and Luis Dutra Jr. as well. So he's just got to show a little bit more, right? He could be the legit, just like Sean Strickland. When he was first coming back, there's a little bit of hesitancy. Geez, you look back, his first fight back looked good. You see his second fight, which he fought Brendan Allen, And it's like, oh, this shit. Sean Strickland looks good. Breese might be that guy. Breese might, coming off the KB Bula fight, might show up here and knock Akhmedov out and look the shit. But like, I'm not buying quite into it just yet. So I think Akhmedov's a live underdog. If Akhmedov was to win the fight, it's going to be by decision. And looking at that price tag, it was real generous. Akhmedov by decision at, let me just bring it up, plus 235. Fight goes the distance, minus 135. So if you think Akhmedov's going to lose the fight, but hey, dude, the guy's pretty durable. His losses, both by TKO, both in the third round, late in the third round, when he got tired. But those are years ago, man. If you short up his cardio even 2 minutes better, then those fights go the distance, right? This guy is durable. Maybe Breese pieces him up from the outside, doesn't put him away. Flip side of that, if Akhmedov springs the upset, it'll be by decision. So maybe the way that I would look at is just fight goes the distance. But I'm kind of liking that Akhmedov by decision prop as just like a punt type play. I know you're on the other side, so that's making me feel like, yeah, maybe I'm just buying too much into Akhmedov's grinding style and durability. But Tom Breese has got a couple of critics to answer, myself being one of them, and maybe this is his coming out party, but we'll have to see.
I'll need to see him, like you said, go up against the league competition and actually secure the victory and go out there and show us that he actually can live up to the potential that everybody keeps giving to him. I'm guilty of that. Like I said, I believe he's a top 10 guy, but we need to see him go and do that against somebody like an Omari Akhmedov before we can really ride home about it. All right, let's keep things moving along. We got Lerone Murphy versus Douglas Silva de Andrade. I like to call him poor man John Lineker, but Lerone Murphy, minus 310 favorite, huge favorite here. Now he's coming off a big victory over Ricardo Ramos, where he just ground and pounded his head through the canvas. Absolutely crazy finish that we saw there. And then before that went to a draw with Zubaira Tukhugov. I believe he was a pretty hefty underdog going into that fight too. He just could not stop the takedown, and that was very, very concerning. Now here against Douglas Silva de Andrade, I feel like he has an advantage. One, obviously with the reach. Two, I believe he's a slightly taller as well too. I feel like he should be able to keep the distance here. I find with Douglas Silva de Andrade, he's a guy that, like I said, kind of like a John Lineker, if he's able to move forward and kind of just show disdain for your striking like he did against Marlon Vera, he could just walk through your shots like he did against Hedin Barao, and he's going to throw his winging hooks. He has a couple combinations where he's actually throwing a little bit more straighter shots than we've seen from John Lineker, but I still feel like he falls into the same mold here. The one question mark that I do have about Silva is his takedown defense. It seems a little bit sketchy, and we saw what kind of damage Lerone Murphy can do if he's able to get guys onto their backs. The guy just is able to generate so much momentum and so much velocity with his strikes that he should be able to, pretty much dead dudes on the ground, even from the full guard position or even from that stacked position as well too. However, the only time we've really seen Douglas Silva de Andrade finish via strikes, well, not even via strikes, it was via strikes, but it was a doctor stoppage due to the beating that Piotr Jan put on him, current bantamweight champion. So there's nothing really to be mad at there. And then before that, he got choked out by Rob Font via guillotine choke. And then before that, he lost a fight to Zubaira Tukhugov. So those are his only 3 losses: decision, submission, KO. Do I think Lerone Murphy will be able to KO him? I think it's possible. He has 6 of his 9 victories have come via finish, but then once you come to the UFC, like you've said in past episodes, the leveler is just much more different. So you may have a 95% finishing rate on the regional scene, but once you come to the UFC, you're fighting the top dogs, and I believe that Douglas Silva de Andrade is on the cusp of that top 20-ish in the bantamweight division. He's 35 years old, so he doesn't really have much going for him in terms of the age, but I think that Lerone Murphy is a guy that's a prospect, and I think people are really noticing that here with him being a minus 310 favorite and only growing as the days go by. I'm stumped though. I feel as though we could see if Lerone tries to pursue the takedown and get some ground and pound going like he did against Ricardo Ramos, he could be live for a takedown or for a finish and a KO. But then also I could see an instance where he kind of just keeps his distance and kind of just picks apart Douglas from distance, kind of like Rob Font was successful in doing so. If he gives his opponent confidence by showing that the strikes are actually affecting him, then he's probably not going to win that fight. But if he just walks through the shots and just says, I don't care what you're throwing at me, he could potentially just walk down Lerone Murphy for 3 rounds and potentially pull off a decision victory as well. I'm leaning the Lerone Murphy side. I feel like he's going to be throwing the big shots. I think he's going to use his distance well enough. And the spot that I'm liking is probably the Murphy to win via decision. Again, I know he has 6 finishes by KO out of his 9 victories, but Murphy by decision is plus 240. You got to give it to Douglas. He is quite durable. Outside of his Piotr Jan loss, he can take a shot for sure. But I'll go with Murphy via decision. How are you seeing this?
I got Murphy as well. I think that Murphy is kind of one of these Leon Edwards types where he's, a British UK prospect, comes down. Where's his best acumen? Is he a good striker? Is he a good wrestler? He's low key, does everything well, and he's getting better. He just needs to showcase that. I mean, he took a really tough fight in his UFC debut against Zabir Tuhugov, coming in and fighting on the undercard of Poirier versus Khabib. You're going into enemy territory. You're taking on Khabib's guy on their own card. Like, it's going to be a tough outing for you. The first round, he suffers a 10-8 round. Like, he's just getting absolutely demolished. Gives up 3 takedowns, I believe, getting beat on. And then he just rallies back, second and third round. He ends up tiring Tuhugov out. He ends up doing the better work. He ends up winning in enemy territory, rounds 2 and 3, and has to settle for a draw. But you see him come back against Holmes. You see the improvements there as well. And he was competitive standing, no doubt about it. But as soon as the fight hit the ground, it's like, this guy's really explosive. He's got big power, and he's making improvements. He's 29 years old, so it's hard to call him a prospect per se, but maybe he's more of a refined product, and maybe he just needs those fights to kind of show you that. With Douglas D. Andrade, it's not that he's not refined. I mean, he's 35 years old. He has a crazy record, 26 and 3. But he's an anomaly. He really is. He debuted in the UFC against, common opponent Zubair Tuhugov. I remember when he debuted, he was 22-0. That was his record when he debuted in the UFC. He was the underdog, by the way, to Tuhugov, and he lost. And then his wins, Cody Gibson, no longer with the promotion. Henry Briones, no longer with the promotion. But this is the key, right? So he loses his debut against Tuhugov in 2014. Then that's his only fight, 2014. Then he fights Cody Gibson, his only fight of 2015. Then he fights Henry Briones, his only fight of 2016. Rob Font, his only fight of 2017. He fought twice in 2018. Marlon Vera and Peter Yan went and won. Then fought once in 2019. And now taken all of 2020 off. Like, man, he's been signed with the promotion for 7 years. He's had 7 fights. He's 35 years old. Those 22 wins that he came to the UFC beforehand, nobody even knows who those guys are. And I'm not saying that in like they're no-name fighters, as in like if you were to try to track them down at their mailing address, half of them don't exist. Now, this guy throws heavy heat. He comes forward. He's a poor man's John Lineker. He can be dangerous, and he does show a couple nice wins. He beat Marlon Vera. You can't take that away from him. But that's on the basis of Marlon Vera having a really slow start and, Douglas D. Andrade standing his ground. He's also fought tough guys like Rob Font, whom he lost to. He's got a win over Renan Barão, a former champion. It was up by 145, though, keep in mind. But ultimately, it's just like he's so one-dimensional with his plant his feet and just swing those bombs and try to counter on you. And I think that's where Lerone Murphy's going to be able to play the distance, beat him inside, outside, dart in and out, come inside the pocket. He can take him down if he wants. He can do some work on the ground. He's got the better ground game. And overall, I just think that speed and youth is going to be on his side, and he should be able to do enough to win a decision. So there's definitely a world where Lerone Murphy finishes his fight if he gets him down and he puts him away. And we've seen that with Douglas D. Andrade. As tough as he is, once he starts to take that damage, he slows down big time, and then you can put it on him. Rob Font submits him, and no discredit, Rob Font's a top-level talent, but not really a submission guy, but all the same, he put it on him first, hurt him, was able to take him down, was able to do some damage, and then Peter Yan is the GOAT. So, going 2 rounds with him is pretty dope. Your corner did the right thing, throwing the towel in, but at the same time, like, now he's taken off a year and a half since the Renan Barão fight. He's 35. Lerone Murphy could put it on him and force himself a stoppage as well. So I don't want to chase that Murphy by decision or Murphy by TKO. So I don't really have a great prop for this fight. As far as the Murphy money line goes, he's minus 310. So you'd have to make him a parlay piece. And do we love him that much as a parlay piece? It remains to be seen. We still got to see weigh-ins. We still got to give it a little bit of time. So, I don't have a great lean on this as far as a prop goes.
Yeah, I'm the same way for sure. Just like the Sumaderji fight, I don't know in the distance or even decision. I could definitely see both outcomes here. All right, let's keep things rolling along. Another fight, just like Akhmedov and Breese, that we were supposed to get a couple weeks ago, a couple times now. Tyson Nam versus Matt Schnell. We got minus 125 on Tyson Nam and plus 105 on Matt Schnell. Now, I believe that Matt Schnell has the much better technical boxing here. I believe he's a better striker. I believe he could win this fight on output. He has great submissions as well, too. But Tyson Nam is a very durable fighter. He hasn't really been – I don't even think he's been finished to begin with. The issue is Tyson Nam is just not a round winner. So if you're kind of backing Tyson Nam, you are more welcome than to just take him by KO. Plus 155 is what Nam is via KO. That's his win condition. He's had 7 complete rounds in the UFC, and he's won 0 of them. He can't win a round for his life. He's a headhunter. He goes out there. He's trying to just take your out off. And I think that's exactly what he's live in terms of doing with Matt Schnell here. Now, when I initially broke this fight for my own podcast down, I went to Matt Schnell side. I'm like, okay, this guy's going to be able to pick him apart on the volume side. But then when you start to go down the record of Matt Schnell, you see how many times he's been finished. Most notably that I believe it was Hector Sandoval who put him out with some half-hearted ground and pound. That was that was a huge red flag to me. And once I really start to dig into it a little bit more, I just cannot trust the chin of Matt Schnell here, especially to try to survive Tyson Am for 15 minutes. This is a guy that took off Ali Bagaudinov's head at the end of the 3rd round. So he definitely has power that sustains itself from minute 1 to minute 15. And even though he's losing the entire fight, it might just take one shot for him to put you out. And I think he could definitely find the chin of Matt Schnell here. And that's kind of where I'm going. And I don't really like to veer too far off from the original pick that I made on my podcast, but this is one of those instances where I got to be like, you know what? I was absolutely wrong in my analysis of this. Like, yeah, he could win a decision, but man, his chin gets cracked a lot. And the last time we saw Matt Schnell, he got deaded by Alexandre Pantoja in a fight that he was quite competitive up until he got put out. And I feel like that could be the same thing here, where he's kind of lighting up Tyson Am, but then Tyson Am just lands that one bomb. So playing Tyson Am at -125, great line, don't get me wrong, but I think it's absolutely insane to just do that. I think you would rather just go with the KO prop because that's how he gets his victories. The last time he won a decision was over a guy named Shojin Miki, I believe, who was 6-4, and that guy was literally the only wins he has is over guys that are 0-0 or with a losing record. So that's the only reason he won a decision in that fight. He's not winning decisions; he's just knocking dudes out, and I think that's exactly what he's going to do here against Matt Schnell. So I got Matt Schnell KO +155. I think that's a great line. What about you?
Yeah, well, I think that Tyson Nam is like a mythical creature. This guy has paid his dues to the sport multiple times over. Never really got his shot. You know what I mean? He goes out and he knocks out the reigning Bellator champ at the time, Eduardo Dantas, in Prosciutto in Brazil, in the guy's backyard, deads the guy, and like no good came out of it. He signs a World Series of Fighting contract where they match him up against Marlon Moraes. It's like, man, these are tough fights. Beyond that, he has to go to Russia, goes to their backyards, and beats a pile of legitimate Russians. As you mentioned, Ali Bagautinov being the best one, the 5th round KO. It's like his cardio is good because he doesn't overexert himself. And that's why he gives up rounds. Because he's one of these guys that probably realizes he has so much power that maybe like a Jeremy Stevens, a predated version of Jeremy Stevens, he's a little bit better now, I guess, is that they wait a little bit too long to let their hands go because they're just like, oh, don't worry, I'll hit this guy and I'll knock him out. The thing with Tyson Nam is that if you have a suspect chin or you're going to have a firefight with him, he's going to hit you and he's going to knock you out. He carries a tremendous amount of power at 125. He carries that power all the way through to 135. But certainly when he fights at 125, and this is a 125-pound fight, yeah, if he hits you, it's going to do a tremendous amount of damage. And I just don't know that Matt Schnell is going to be able to stand up to that. You mentioned how Tyson Nam doesn't win rounds, but it's like if you went to go talk to Adashev or Jerome Rivera and ask them who won the first round.
You know what I mean? Complete rounds.
They wouldn't be able to tell. Right. But that's actually a good point too, right? Because he loses to Sergio Pettis and Kai Kara France, who are both really quick in and out of the pocket guys that have good volume. They stay to the outside, they chip away at you. He's got to track those guys down. The big power, if it doesn't land on them, and they both got really good chins as well. It's like stylistically, they're not the best fights for him. Matt Schnell's not a striker. Matt Schnell's a ground game. Matt Schnell needs to get you to the ground and try to submit you as a very opportunistic submission game, but a lot of it's coming off submissions off his back. The big one he has is Louis Smolka. He caught Louis Smolka by a triangle choke. But a triangle is one of those, I'm not going to call it a fluke submission, but it's one of those things that you can throw up and catch a guy in, and then it's too late for him. You tap him out. But it's like, what did you really show? It's a submission off your back. What do we have from him beyond that? That's where I have a trouble with it. His striking, maybe he's a little bit faster. Maybe he's going to throw a little bit of volume, but it's never led well for any time that Matt Schnell has tried to rely on his striking as a predominant game plan. It's never gone well for him. This goes back to he actually shows a win over Jonathan Martinez, right? Because I heard someone talking about it the other day. They're like, man, he beat Jonathan Martinez. That's a feather in his cap. It's like, no, he didn't. It's a DQ win. Jonathan Martinez KO'd him with a knee to the face, which was on the ground. But it was like Jonathan Martinez put it on him and KO'd him. It shows win, but he gets KO'd bad, right? Rob Font, first round, but it's Rob Font, so we give him a pass. The Hector Sandoval fight, that's where it's like big red flag. It's a half shot, lands him side of the head. He falls down. He gets ground and pounded out. Pantoja's a good fighter. Pantoja's also BJJ black belt grappling specialist. His striking's good, not great, but it's like he just hits Schnell with that one big shot and he puts him out. Tyson Nam is more than capable of doing all of that 10 times over, and I think that's going to be the problem. And the last thing I got to say is Tyson Nam is one of these Hawaiian-born tough, let's scrap kind of guys. But the dude spent 10 years in Oregon, and man, his takedown defense is solid. His takedown offense leaves something to be desired for because he never tries to take anybody down. He uses the wrestling to keep the fight standing and smash on you. And Schnell's best path to victory is get this fight to the ground, but I don't think he's got the offensive wrestling to do it. So herein lies his problem. He's going to be stuck. He's going to be stuck striking, and maybe he has success for 2, 3, 4 minutes, but at some point he's going to get landed on that counter shot. Tyson Nam's going to put him down. Tyson Nam is feeling awesome right now. He's coming over back-to-back wins, both by KO, both in under a couple minutes. Both of those fights, they were booked at 125, but Schnell bailed out, leaving him to take on opponents at 135 at short notice, and he's looking great. Him at 125 is going to be comfortable with. And the very last point, and then I'll leave you with this, is Matt Schnell was booked to fight, because obviously they've been booked twice now. But the last time that he was booked to fight Tyson Nam, he shows up on the scales, he misses weight for the 125-pound limit, comes in at 128. Then the day of the fight, his body shuts down, he gets sick, and he pulls out. Day of the fight. So does he have trouble making 125? Is this going to be another bad weight cut? And by the way, if you're having a bad weight cut and you're having to exert yourself and you're getting sick and now you have to get locked in the cage with Tyson Nam for 15 minutes, it doesn't go good, man. So yeah, Tyson Nam's the play, as you mentioned, by KO is a saucy little prop. The money line is pretty generous to be honest with you, but because he seems to be a KO guy and Matt Schnell shows 3 first-round KO losses and 3 UFC losses, that's everything you need to know, really, in my opinion. So sign me up for Tyson Nam to keep the win streak going.
Yeah, I feel like a complete dum-dum that I even put Matt Schnell as my pick on my podcast. And I'm just like, what was I thinking? Maybe I just didn't dig deep enough. And thankfully, I'm able to make that correction before the fight actually happens itself. All right, let's keep things moving along. We got Roxanne Modafferi versus Viviane Araujo. And just as picture-perfect form for Roxanne Modafferi, she's coming in as a plus 270 dog. Now, let me just throw some numbers out at you. We got Antonina Shevchenko that she fought. Came in as a plus 255 dog. Wins that fight via decision. Comes in against Macy Barber as a plus 525 dog, and say what you want about the torn ACL and all that. She still goes out there, puts on a veteran performance, and gets her hand raised. And then Andrea Lee, her last fight, plus 260, goes out there, beats Andrea Lee just like she did the first time they fought, when Andrea Lee was a young little pup, thinking that she comes in now and she's filled out her game and she could hopefully stop a takedown. Roxanne Modafferi is like, nah, it's cool. Hold my beer. I'm going to take you down, and I'm just going to just lay on top of you for about 15 minutes. Now, the issue here with Viviane Araujo, and I'm very high on Vivi. I think that she has a ton of potential. I like what we've been seeing from her. She had a very dominant performance against Montana De La Rosa last time around. But the one thing that really sticks out to me is her fight against Alexis Davis, where she struggles so much in that second round to get back to her feet. And we know what Roxanne Modafferi, once she gets you down, she does a pretty good job of kind of maintaining that top mount. Even in the Antonina Shevchenko fight, Shevchenko did a good job of getting back to her feet, but she still managed to get dragged back down to the ground because of Roxanne's durability, ability to hit shots and drag this fight to the ground over and over again. So Viviane Araujo minus 230, not the spot that I'm really looking at. I think this is definitely a pass in my eyes. I do think she has the capabilities to go out there and light Roxanne Modafferi up on the feet. I like what we saw from her in the Montana De La Rosa fight, where it even got close to any clinch exchanges. She didn't even pause for a split second. She was jerking either way. She was making sure that she wasn't, up against the cage. She was getting out of bad positions, and I feel like she'll be able to do the same thing against Roxanne Modafferi. Now, with Viviane Araujo, the fight that she lost to Jessica Eye, we saw Jessica Eye kind of just stand her ground in that fight. It set up a lot of her game with her leg kicks, but anytime Viviane Araujo was coming in, Jessica Eye stood her ground, threw a couple shots, and that's what ultimately led to her winning that fight. Roxanne Modafferi, she could definitely take a shot or two here. And I feel like she could kind of do the same thing as Jessica Eye in terms of standing her ground and throwing a couple of shots. Now, we know what Roxanne Modafferi stand-up is like, right? It's probably one of the worst that we've seen in the UFC. It's so robotic. It just looks like she's hella uncomfortable. But the one thing that she's been working on over the last couple of years is her strength and conditioning. And that could have a bit of an advantage for her here in terms of, once she grabs that body lock on Viviane Araujo, if she's able to, she might have some success in terms of taking Vivi down. And from what I've seen from Vivi off of her back, not the most impressed, especially when you're struggling to get off your back, especially against a girl like Alexis Davis. So I have some pause in terms of playing Viviane here. I think the prop that you might want to go for, and I don't even think you have to play the prop with Roxanne Modafferi. You can take the plus 270, and I think you have some good value there. If you want to take Modafferi to win by decision, I believe that line is currently at plus 4. What do we got? Plus 415. I think that's a solid spot too if you're looking for a prop here. I believe Viviane wins this fight. But with the way Roxanne keeps pulling these upsets off and what we've seen, the flaws from Viviane in the past, I feel like it could be you're signing yourself up for disaster if you're going out there and parlaying Vivi at that minus 330 range. How are you seeing this one?
I think Roxanne Modafferi is like the quintessential gatekeeper. That is her job. She shows up, she fights absolutely anybody. She's a girl that's lost 5 fights in a row in her career and has come back from that. She's fought all the best girls in the world 10 times over, pretty much over the span of almost 2 decades. But they bring her in specifically as a litmus test to see, are you a fraudulent fighter? Or are you the real deal? And Roxanne Modafferi has been able to expose a lot of fighters. Antina Shevchenko is the first one. Well, it turns out she's not her sister Valentina. She's got massive flaws in her game, namely with that grappling, and Roxanne Modafferi is that fighter to expose her. Macy Barber was 21 years old and had, for only a moderately hot chick, had a massive sense of self-esteem, and it just played against her. And Roxanne Modafferi ends up, getting the win. Andrea Lee ends up being, a borderline fraud fighter, just unable to get over the hump in any type of meaningful fight. And Roxanne Modafferi is there to take advantage. It was the bookmaker's fault for pricing her as such a heavy underdog because she was taking on girls that were, untested. Viviane Araujo she's got a long ways to go still, but I don't like what I see for at least 2 rounds. The 3rd round, her cardio seems to be shot, but for the first 2 rounds, man, she is very strong. She's aggressive. She's got excellent striking. Her takedown defense checks out. Very hard to get her to the ground. It's that she seemingly does a little bit too much, and by the 3rd round, that's when you start to see her fatigue. Now, looking at her UFC run, it's kind of been the same thing the whole way through, right? The Toledo Bernardo fight, she knocks her out. But then the Alexis Davis fight, she cruises in the first 2 rounds, then she starts to fatigue a little bit. But don't worry, she's up the first 2. Alexis can't finish her, so she has to win. Against Jessica Eye, she has a hot start. She takes Jessica Eye down twice in the first round. And then after that, cardio starts to become a problem. Jessica Eye chips away at her. Future title contender, by the way, in Jessica Eye. But then the Montel and De La Rosa fight. Montel and De La Rosa goes 1 for 6 on takedowns. Looks like Viviane Araujo is finally shored up that takedown defense. Cardio's checking out. And then it did look in that 3rd round like she was getting tired. But it looked like there's a progression there. Like she is getting better. Like she's getting rounds under her belt. She's getting experience under her belt. And she's getting better. Roxanne's takedowns, they're primarily trip-based. So she needs to go there, get a hold of Viviane Araujo, and trip her to the ground. I just don't see it happening all that easy, at least not in the first 10 minutes. Viviane Araujo is going to have way better striking. She's way faster. She's way more athletic, and she's just overall a lot stronger. So she should be able to keep the fight standing where she'll chip away. She'll hit Roxanne Modafferi, very hittable opponent, and should more or less have her way. In the 3rd round, I wouldn't be crazy to think, you know what? In the 3rd round, maybe Vivi's tired. Maybe Vivi doesn't take Roxanne out. It was very durable. And in the 3rd round, Roxanne's able to trip her and take her to the ground. But all of Roxanne's upsets, they're not finishes. They're decision victories. She takes you down multiple times in the fight, controls you throughout the fight, and wins the fight. So her being down 20-17, let's say, her being down 2 rounds coming into that 3rd round, that's a problem. That's a big problem for her for sure. She needs to at least secure one of the first 2 rounds and then win that 3rd because she's not really much of a finisher. She's got absolutely no knockout power, and her submission game is nice. She's BJJ black belt, good submissions, but I don't see her submitting Viviane Araujo. So yeah, I'm going to have to go with Arroyo. I see where you're reluctant to go with her because it's like we've got the upset specialist Roxanne Modafferi in the house. But you watch the tape on Roxanne, she moves extremely robotic, 17 pro losses on her record, very hittable, crafty, savvy veteran, there to take advantage of fighters that they just weren't really there. Whereas Vivi, this is a division that if she shows 2 or 3 more good wins, they're going to be in title talks, right? Not because she's some great talent, because it's a thin division. She's got some upside. You'll see bigger fights for her down the road. This is the litmus test that she does pass, and Roxanne Modafferi comes up on the short end of it. I'd like to take that by decision as well, so I think fight goes the distance, minus 270. It's no way. If you're going to take Roxy, you take Roxy by decision. As you mentioned, great price tag. Vivi by decision, minus 125. And so that to me, that's, Vivi gets the job done. She wins those first 2 rounds, but not discrediting Roxanne, what she brings to the table. She can slow it down. She can survive. But Vivi by decision to improve the price tag.
Yeah, I'm huge on Vivi, but I want to see her pass this test before we really ride home about her. All right, let's keep things moving along. We got a light heavyweight bout up next. We got Ike Villanueva versus Vinicius Moreira. We got minus 140 on Ike and plus 120 on Vinicius. The under 1.5 is kind of where I like my money the most here. So combined between these two guys, they're 31 of 41. They've hit the under 1.5. Now with Vinicius Moreira, he seems to be a guy, his durability just continues to diminish over and over again. When you're getting rocked by a guy like Paul Craig, things are getting real sour for sure in your career. Now you got a guy in Ike Villanueva. I'm probably not going to trust him at that minus 140 line, because if he does get taken down, a solid chance he's probably not getting back to his feet. You could absolutely see Vinicius Moreira snatch up an arm triangle choke or something along those lines. Maybe get that full mount and rain down some blows and take a rear naked choke if that's what he gets. But on the feet, Villanueva seems to have some power in his hands, and I think it could definitely give Vinicius Moreira some trouble here. So I would rather not pick a side here. I feel like both guys have a path to victory in terms of, a path to victory and then a path to loss. And I think that either way, we're going to get this fight done within 7.5 minutes. I just don't see how it goes anywhere past that. We've seen Moreira very much struggle on the feet. The guy throws 1-2 shots out there just to kind of close the distance, and then once post you up against the cage, try to get you to the ground. I feel like he might have the strength advantage here, so I think he will be successful in dragging Villanueva to the ground, and then it'll just get very, very sketchy for Villa. However, in that process, we've seen the blitzing attacks from Mike Villanueva, where he's landing power shots on guys like Roger Narvaez, former UFC fighter, Rashad Coulter, former UFC fighter as well too. And I gotta believe that those guys have a little bit more durability than our guy Vinicius Moreira, who again, 3 straight KO losses. You got choked out by Paul Craig, but not before getting dropped by, I believe it was a knee that eventually dropped him there. Eric Anders before that, and then obviously Alonzo Menefield, just absolutely deading dudes with the power that he has too. I think Ike has that power. I'm not playing that minus 140 on him, nor am I playing that TKO prop on him at plus 120. I'm just sitting back, taking that under 1.5 at that even money minus 110ish. I think that's a solid spot. That's where my money's going. How about you?
You know what? I agree with that. The under 1.5 seems to be the move here. You got Vinicius Moreira. At one time, he seemed okay. He's got good jiu-jitsu. He's a big, lumbering guy. He's a poor man's Bigfoot Silva, so to speak. But it's like you want TRT Bigfoot. You don't want no TRT Bigfoot. Yeah. And that's what he's kind of become as of late. I mean, prior to coming to the UFC, the Jason Ratcliffe win for Super Fight League in India, Jason Ratcliffe was actually decent, right? So being able to take him down, submit him in the first round, it's a feather in the cap. Contender Series Brazil against John Allen. John Allen, who we eventually saw come to the UFC as well, has a win over Marcus Perez. It's like, man, his submission game, he's strong. He gets you up against the cage. He can peel you to the ground. He's got good top pressure. He's a BJJ black belt. Alonzo Menefield, we'll give him a pass. It's Menefield. He's a former football player, and he certainly looks the part. And he touches you, you go down. Eric Anders, it's like, funny enough, former football player and looks the part. If he touches you, he's got less power than Menefield, but, big, strong, lumbering guy. Okay, no problem. Paul Craig. Paul Craig never knocked out anybody. He's knocked out Shogun, but Shogun technically tapped right before, so submission.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. I'm not really seeing it. This guy really can't take a shot. But if he does get the fight to the ground, he should be okay. He's just got to get it there. Ike Villanueva's got the power. Ike Villanueva's got the striking, but he also has no ground game. He doesn't really set anything up. The Jordan Wright fight was kind of disappointing because he just allowed Jordan Wright to get a quick start on him, and then I don't know why they stopped the fight. It wasn't that bad, but
that was a nasty cut. That was a nasty cut. Like his eyebrow was kind of just hanging in front of his eye.
It was Jordan Wright, dude. They should have just been like, we'll give you till the end of the first round, and maybe you land on this guy. But all the same, it's like he just got off to a slow start. My problem is that Vinicius gets off to a fast start. And so Vinicius probably plows across the ring, doesn't want to get hit, closes the distance as quick as he possibly can, doesn't spend no time striking, just gets Ike up against the cage and tries to peel him to the ground. And if he does succeed to get him to the ground, Ike's in trouble, man. Ike's in big time trouble. The submission probably comes from Vinicius. If Vinicius doesn't get him to the ground, Ike's knocking him out. So under 1.5 looks pretty good. The fight to end in the first round seems pretty good. But the under 1.5 gives you an extra 2.5 minutes just in case. And that's the 2.5 minutes that we need here. The last thing there in the Paul Craig fight, it was only 3 minutes, but at the 3-minute mark, Vinicius is suck and win. He was tired. And the knee, who knows? But you could kind of tell he was just like, I don't want to be here. Why the UFC would bring him back on a 3-fight losing streak, I don't know. Why the UFC would bring back Ike Villanueva after his 2-fight losing streak to Chase Sherman and Jordan Wright, of all people, I don't know. Why the UFC would book both of these guys against each other on a main card fight, I really don't know. But it should be exciting for as long as it lasts, which is hopefully less than 7.5 minutes.
I do want to bring up a quick comment here from a loyal watcher of ours, Roberto Lopez, saying, how did this fight sneak into the main? We know why, because it's going to be chaos for as long as it lasts. We need to get that casual viewership up. We need to see, oh, this is a little bit of a slugfest or a slop fest, but we're going to get a quick finish. That's how I ended up in the main event, or a main card. At least that's my reasoning here. All right, let's keep things moving along. We got the co-main event coming up. 14 fights. I did not actually remember that it was 14 fights. This is a big card, but we got some good ones on here for sure. This co-main event is definitely one that I'm looking forward to. We got Warlley Alves against Mounir Lazzez, who seems to be the belle of the ball after he went out there and won a decision victory over Abdul Razak Al Hassan in a fight where came in as a pretty hefty underdog. Everybody expected him to go out there and get dusted in that first round, and he was close to getting dusted. He was eating a lot of shots from Abdul Razak Al Hassan in those first 2 to 3 minutes, but he ate each and every one of them like lunch. None of them seemed to really affect him. He managed to withstand that barrage and then put on a beautiful striking clinic from the outside, landing a lot of shots up the middle. His lead knee up the middle is a beautiful tactic as well that he was using in that fight. I think this kid has a bright ceiling. Now, I don't want to overblow it. Like I know that win over Abdul Razak was great and all that stuff, and I feel like people might be thinking that this guy could be a title contender at some point, but we need to dial it down a little bit. Abdul is a guy that if you don't get knocked out in that first round, you can look pretty good against him if the longer this fight goes on. And that's exactly what he was able to do against Abdul there. But I like the range striking or distance striking that we see from this kid. The guy's a sniper. The guy uses his range very well. Even in the Muay Thai clinch, his knees are deadly. His elbows are very, very impressive too. His only loss is to a guy named Eldar Eldarov, and our diehard MMA fans know who Eldarov is. And we saw how that fight went. He pretty much took him down at will and was able to kind of control that fight from the top position. Now, Warlley Alves, not really much of a takedown artist. The guy has a decent guillotine choke as he got Colby Covington in, way back at UFC 194, but not really known to be that guy that pursues double leg takedowns or anything of that sort. In my opinion, Warlley Alves is a one-round fighter. I think he's going to get picked apart if this fight does reach that second round. Now, I'd like to draw comparisons to his 2 most recent losses, James Krause and Randy Brown, both guys that like to fight at range, like to fight at length. We didn't see as much of that range striking from Randy Brown, who eventually got a submission victory over Warlley Alves in that fight. But in the James Krause fight, that's exactly what we saw. We saw him kind of playing with him at that range. And I believe that Mounir has a little bit more of a refined game from that range and that distance striking than a James Krause. And he has a little bit more power, at least from what I believe. So I feel like if Mounir is able to get out of the first 2 or 3 minutes, he should be able to put on a bit of a striking clinic against Warlley Alves. Now, we've seen Warlley Alves obviously get that decision victory over Salim Tohari. Interesting decision for sure. The Sultan Ali fight, he wins at the end of round 2 after he absolutely shuts Sultan Ali's eye. And then obviously he knocks out Sergio Moraes in that third round back in May of 2019. But we know what we're getting with Sergio Moraes. The guy trying to get the fight to the ground, winging shots, was just eating leg kicks for days. Mounir's not going to allow him to, set up that many leg kicks and get those leg kicks off with as much propensity as he did in that Sergio Moraes fight. So I truly believe that Warlley Alves is absolutely outgunned here. If there is a prop on Warlley Alves to win this fight under 2.5 minutes, that's the way you're going to want to go. But if you're backing Mounir Lazzez here, I do think he's very live for a finish here too. And the prop that I like the most is Mounir round 2 plus 500. I think that's where he truly starts to open up and really starts to get Warlley Alves on the back foot. Maybe those knees start to come into play as well too. James Krause set up that beautiful finish with the knee, step in knee as well. I can see the same thing from Mounir here. Now I want to slow down the hype train on Mounir, but this is a perfect matchup for him. Almost a Abdul Razak Al Hassan type of matchup where a 1-round fighter, and after that, the guy's probably going to be sucking wind. But I truly feel like now that he's comfortable in the UFC, he should be able to get Warlley Alves out there probably in the second round. I'm going second round, KO, plus 500. That's the spot that I like the most. Are you seeing what I'm seeing with Mounir? Talk me down.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the UFC sees it as well. Why else would you book Warlley Alves as the co-main event, right? I mean, Warlley Alves is 1 and 2 in his last 3 fights. He has not looked good. Virtually all of his wins since 2015, because he does have the win over Colby Covington. He does have the win over Araujo, but after 2015, like all of his wins over guys no longer employed with the company. He looks bad outside of 1 round. There's no reason you would book this guy as a co-main event. He's also was supposed to fight Christian Aguilera on an early prelim of last week's card. That fight fell apart. They moved him to here, and they give him a co-main event status against Mounir Lazzez. Well, that makes all the sense in the world to me. Mounir Lazzez trains full-time in Dubai. He's a big star in the Middle East. and he looks the part. They're looking to push him. He's the A side here. That's why he's the co-main event status. Warlley Alves is the opponent that's being brought in. Warlley Alves is a one-round fighter. And where that does play good for Mounir Lazzez is he just fought a one-round fighter in Razak Abdul Hassan. The difference is that Al Hassan is going to try to knock you out in the first round, whereas Warlley Alves' best path would be to snack up that guillotine in the first round. We've seen if there is a path to victory over Lazzez is don't stand with this guy. He's 6'1" at welterweight. He's long, he's rangy, and he's a very good striker. You need to take this guy down, and you can take this guy down. Warlley Alves is a former BJJ world champion. You know, doesn't have great wrestling, but he's so strong he can just plow you to the ground. But he uses too much muscle in all of his techniques. And if he doesn't get that first round submission, now he's just a sitting duck. And maybe it's heart, maybe it's will, maybe it's cardio. But once he runs out of gas, he's not one of these guys that is going to like hang on for a decision. He kind of just like falls apart. When he lost to Bryan Barberena, just to put things into perspective, he was a -600 favorite over Bryan Barberena, who just quite simply took his best in the first round, marched him down second and third, and put an absolute savage beating on him. Beating Salim Touari, that's not impressive. Beating Sultan Aliyev, that is impressive considering he's a combat sambo specialist who just grinds you to a halt. But, a guy no longer hacking a job in the UFC for an obvious reason. James Krause is a 55er. James Krause not only a 55er, but after he tired out Warlley Alves, he put an absolute clinic on him. He battered him pillar to post and knocked him out in the second round. Before, it was actually under 2.5. It was 228 of the second round. Like, it put a beating on him after that first round. And then Randy Brown, this is one that's super interesting to me. So he's getting tired, clearly. He's starting to get chipped away. He's getting hurt. And this is where I want to bring in that quitter mentality here. He's a BJJ world champion. But as soon as he was getting hit and getting tired, he gives up the triangle as a way to be like, I don't want to be here anymore.
Against Randy Brown.
That's what I mean. Randy Brown submitted him, right?
Yeah.
And Randy Brown's long and he's lanky and he's got the legs and triangle moves. Triangles, yeah, it's right up. But exactly, he was a striker. And all he had to do was break the guy's will. And then Warlley was like, You look at all of his best wins, right? And they're all quick finishes for the most part. So, yeah, this is the tale of he's going to try to go out there and take out Mounir in the first round. And if he fails to do so, Mounir should take over rounds 2, rounds 3. I got Mounir by KO. You made a great point with that second round. And maybe you back that up by taking the third round as well. They're both big-time plus money. Yeah, I don't think he knocks out Warlley Alves in the first round, but I think that once he defends a couple of those takedown attempts, or once he's able to work his way back up, once Warlley Alves starts to get a little bit winded, that's going to be his opportunity to take this guy out. And Razak Al Hassan, as much as he does get tired, he's also shown a propensity to take that beating. Once he gets tired, he's all right, I did it to myself. Time to do what I got to do. Whereas Warlley Alves is like, time to get out of here. And then the very last thing here is that Warlley Alves has been off 13 months, 14 months, still only 30 years old, not super old, still could have made improvements. But it's really hard to improve your cardio when you haven't fought in a year. So if anything, he's going to come out looking improved in the first round, try to put it on him in the first round. And if he doesn't catch Mounir, then we take that in the second round. And we haven't talked about any live decision or live bets so far. So just to sprinkle that in there, if Warlley does come out and have a good first round showing, maybe wins the first round, you can get a really nice price on Mounir Lazzez, maybe even close to dog money. Yeah, he should win second or third. The first round, that's the dicey situation. So let's just get through that and then secure second or third round TKO.
I'm really looking forward to seeing how Mounir evolves in the UFC, but this is a picture-perfect matchup for him to continue this winning streak that he's on right now. All right, let's get things going to the main event. Before I do get to the main event, I do want to remind everybody we got 230 live viewers right now. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Hit that like button. Trust me, you think it doesn't mean much, but it means a lot. Hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you guys subscribe as well too. All right, let's get to the main event. We got a welterweight bout here between the streaky Neil Magny on a 3-fight winning streak against Michael Chiesa, who's coming off the biggest win in his career over Rafael dos Anjos, which was over a year ago now. So he's been on the sidelines for a little bit, but this is a very intriguing fight. So I kind of approached it in two ways. So I like Neil Magny here. I think he gets the victory, but I did also play the under 4.5 in case Michael Chiesa goes out there and pulls off a submission victory, as I feel that's kind of his path to victory here. Within the first 2 rounds, if he gets Neil Magny down and keeps him down and pulls off a submission, kind of similar to how Rafael dos Anjos was able to do against Neil Magny a couple years ago now, that probably is way to go. But what we've seen from Michael Chiesa as of late, and I kind of got reminded of this once you start to run the tape, his gas tank's probably not the greatest. And I think he's going to have a lot of issues here if he's not able to get that finish in those first 2 rounds. Will he be able to control Neil Magny for 15 minutes? I don't think so. I think he's going to have a lot of trouble keeping him down, and especially in the second and third round. I do. Another thing that was very surprising to me too with Michael Chiesa was how uncomfortable he looks on the feet too. His striking seems like it needs a lot of work, and maybe not just the striking alone, just his confidence when he's on the feet, because it's clear as day that he's just doing the bare minimum on the feet to try to eventually get this fight to the ground. And that's going to be a hard task to do against Neil Magny, who is a cardio machine. The guy trains over there at altitude in Denver, Colorado. We know what his cardio is like. He's been 5 rounds before. He beat Kelvin Gastelum at altitude in a 5-round fight. Like, the guy can definitely go. So the way that I look at it, I feel like Neil Magny could get a late finish here, considering the gas tank issues of Michael Chiesa, or at least I believe he has gas tank issues from what I've seen on tape. And I find it hard to believe that he's going to be able to keep up with that pace and that pressure of Neil Magny. Like, Neil Magny's not a one-punch knockout kind of guy, but he is that guy that can just accumulate strikes and just stick out the jab in your face over and over and over again and start stuffing takedowns later in this fight. It's really going to demoralize the game of Michael Chiesa, who is predominantly a grappler, wants to get the fight to the ground and try to pull off a submission victory. Now he's a jiu-jitsu whiz. The guy has a lot of good submission victories under his belt. I believe he even has a submission victory over Beneil Dariush, who I believe is one of the higher-ranked jiu-jitsu guys in the UFC. So that's why I went with the under 4.5 here, with which is at plus 125. I do want to see if that line has moved since I made the bet. Plus 125, plus 130. And then, yeah, I like Neil Magny. Round 4, you got plus 1950. You got round 5, you got plus 2250. That's kind of, or 2550, I should say. I think those are worth a little bit of a sprinkle, considering the cardio bunny that Neil Magny is. And people can say what they want about him being a decision machine, but you got to look at his competition. You got to look at the fact that he's fighting 5 rounds. You got to look at the fact that Michael Chiesa probably not going to be in the best shape in those 4th and 5th rounds if Neil Magny is able to survive those first 2 rounds. And that's where it gets a little bit iffy for me. Those first 2 rounds, Chiesa should be able to win. But the longer this goes, the more it is in favor of Neil Magny. I think if I was Michael Chiesa, I would have been just like, screw it. Let's do 3 rounds. We were originally scheduled for 3 rounds, right? Why do I got to do 5? We got Zabit Magomedsharipov that turned down a 5-round fight to make it 3 rounds against Calvin Kattar. Anthony Smith did the same thing against Alexander Rakic. You know what I mean? Give me 3 rounds. But no, he's taking the 5 rounds. He wants to make a point here. And I'm thinking for him, he wants to get a submission nice and early. But if he's not able to, things are going to get really, really iffy. And I think that Neil Magny is able to get, or will be live for a late finish in this fight. Do you see it the way I see it, or am I talking shit here?
Yeah, no, maybe he's able to force that late stoppage. I kind of see it going to decision. I think that Michael Chiesa's got a cast iron chin. He's never been knocked out. He's been submitted a couple times, and he technically has a TKO loss to Joe Lozon due to a cut stoppage, but he is pissed off when the ref tells him he can't fight no more in that fight. Like, it's not like he's hurt by no means. He was actually starting to beat Joe Lozon, turn the tide, but it was just a nasty cut. He's got one excellent chin, so Neil Magny could submit him, but I don't know if that he gets a 4th or 5th round TKO. I can see a 4th or 5th round submission if Chiesa is really tired and Magny's putting a beating on him. But again, you would give the grappling advantage, so to speak, to Michael Chiesa. So maybe just the fight goes the distance. Fight goes the distance is minus 150. The Magny by decision, I think, was plus 135. And that's what I'm kind of feeling here. I think that there's a lot to like about Neil Magny. Training at altitude, you just see, as you mentioned, his cardio is always on full display. This is a guy that could fight 3 rounds, no problem. And consensus would be he'd be able to fight 5. That's not just recently. That's his entire career. Neil Magny has never looked gassed in a fight. He just keeps going. That long man, skinny body, you know, you can do so much with it, but you really got to learn how to use it the most effectively. And that's something that he struggled with. Not quite using his reach as long as he could. Not quite using the jab as long as he could. Not quite using the kicks as long as he could. As far as him grappling against opponents, you'd see it back in the day. Like, he would use great control, great wrist control, but like, you know, still not putting his ground game together. Since losing to Santiago Ponzinibbio, taking, you know, quite a bit of time off, actually coming back, he just looks like a reinvented man. The Jingliang Li fight, I mean, he puts an absolute savage beating on Jingliang Li, whereas cardio obviously is never an issue. But it's just his ability to just keep coming at you, keep putting it on you. But it's the Anthony Rocco Martin fight I thought most impressive, because there's a legitimate contender. There's somebody that wants to go out there and take you down, but no, Neil Magny's takedown defense, it checks out. His striking, ever improving. His ring IQ, super high. Robbie Lawler fight's a shot version of Robbie Lawler, but you see the 4 takedowns. You see the absolute control. You see how he'll Dagestani handcuff you and just control your wrist and put a beating on you. But it's a slow, deliberate beating. It's not big KO. It's not big knee to the face. It's like he just grinds you down into the ground. That's why I think he's more of a decision guy. That's why I think this one goes 5. Michael Chiesa as well. He's going to decisions with the Diego Sanchez of the world. He's also fighting a lot of aged fighters at this point advanced stages of their career and winning decisions. So do I think he goes out there and submits Neil Magny? No, not necessarily. If he's going to win this fight, he's going to get takedowns. He's going to hold him down. And that's it. This is astonishing, but you watch the fights and it is what it is. His last fight against Rafael dos Anjos, it's a 3-round fight, okay? Michael Chiesa lands 6 takedowns. He dominated with the grappling. He landed 9 significant strikes in 15 minutes. 15 minutes of dominating the guy on the ground. He landed 9 significant strikes. Okay, fair enough. The Diego fight, he put a beating on him. 47 over 3 minutes or 3 rounds, 5 takedowns. You know, just it's low, but it's 47. That's fine. The Carlos Condit fight, he subbed him in the second round, but he only landed 10. You know, the Anthony Pettis fight, he landed 12. The Kevin Lee fight, he landed 4. The Beneil Dariush fight, he landed 11. The Jim Miller fight, he landed 13. Like, he hasn't scored more than 20 significant strikes. He's done it once in his last, like, 6 or 7 fights. He's absolutely no output at all. All he does is just take you down and hold you down. He's wet blanketing guys. He does have a nasty submission game. He has submitted not only Beneil Dariush, as you mentioned, he submitted Jim Miller. Like, that's a big win, man. That's a big submission win. Michael Chiesa can grapple, but like, he doesn't want to tire himself out, so he doesn't really want to go for the submission and give up a bad position. He'll just take you down, grind you down. And whereas that could work against Neil Magny, he's doing too much. And I remember his UFC 207 on live, Ronda Rousey's retirement fight against Amanda Nunes. We didn't know it was going to be a retirement fight at the time. Ended up being. And Neil Magny, low-key, has a prelim fight against former UFC welterweight champion Johnny Hendricks. Johnny Hendricks proceeds to take him down 6 times. By the striking numbers, Neil Magny won 52-18 or something. But he got taken down 6 times. It's that whenever he gets taken down, he's still just working. And then he gets back up because he's not just taken down the whole time. He works his way back up, and then he gets on you. And the place booed. The place booed big time like it was a robbery. But it was like, yo, your boy didn't do fuck all with the takedowns. He took him down. He held him down. The other guy was working the entire time. Neil Magny won that fight fair and square. As much as they booed, it was the right call. I hadn't Neil Magny, but it was the right call. Well, Chiesa's kind of the same thing. Like, if he does take you down, he's not going to do a whole lot with it. And so I can see judges saying, well, one guy's attacking off his back. He's trying to move. He's trying to scramble. He's trying to get up. He's throwing up elbows. When the fight is standing, he's beating him. Up against the cage, Neil Magny's longer, rangier. And when this does go to round 4 and 5, that's when Neil Magny should pull ahead. All he's got to do is make sure it's not 3-0 going into 4 and 5. And he ends up winning this on a 48-47 at the very least. But I got Neil Magny. I got Neil Magny by decision. I got fight goes the distance.
That's your favorite prop right there, is the fight goes to decision or Neil Magny by decision? Which one are you liking more?
Yeah, I guess, well, fight goes the distance. That's the thing, right? Now you're chasing, actual points on it. So fight goes the distance is -150. So it's like, okay, it's -150. I do have it going to decision, but 5 rounds is a long time. And, maybe Chiesa's tired. Maybe Chiesa can catch him in that submission. That's fine. But Neil Magny by decision specifically is +145. So it just depends if you're one of those guys that wants to parlay some of these pieces together. Then I think you just go fight goes the distance. But it's all about just chasing it. Fight goes the distance. If Chiesa wins, I can very well see him winning decision. So you're covered both ways. It's just not as good of a price tag. With Neil Magny, if you're a Neil Magny backer and you like Neil Magny, it makes sense by decision. But like you're saying, maybe if Chiesa does get tired and he takes him into deeper waters, he puts it on him. Magny goes at a hellacious pace. And Chiesa don't like that. Chiesa also doesn't really have experience going 5 rounds, whereas Neil Magny, as you said, he's gone in there. The Kelvin Gastelum fight's awesome because, yeah, he kind of gets tired near the end, but it's like he's taking him down, he's smashing him, he gets dropped. Like, it's a really good fight, but it shows you, like, the development there. And then the last thing I want to throw on is that submission thing. Chiesa's got the submission advantage. Chiesa could be in trouble. Chiesa shows submission losses to Rafael dos Anjos, the former champion of the world. But then outside of that, Damian Maia and Sergio Moraes, who are like
high level.
Your jiu-jitsu coach, his jiu-jitsu coach is Damian Maia or Sergio Moraes. Like those guys are on a complete different level. So Manny's been submitted by like the creme de la creme. Whereas like Chiesa is an excellent submission guy. But if he's not choking out Diego Sanchez, actually Diego Sanchez is unflappable. Nobody can submit him. What am I saying? Nobody can submit Diego Sanchez. It's never going to happen. But what I am getting at is I think Neil Magny's been in there with really good guys that they've caught him. He's learned a lot from that. The coolest story ever is Neil Magny loses to Damian Maia and then like 4 days later attends a Damian Maia seminar in the same city. Like that's a guy that just wants to learn. The time off, he learned a lot and now he's putting it to good use. So sign me up for Neil Magny.
I feel as though like we've seen Neil Magny for so long that at this point it's like it's not even Neil Magny 2.0, it's Neil Magny 3.0 or 4.0 at this point in time, because he just continues to elevate his game, and now he has a big 3-fight winning streak that he's on, and hopefully he can capitalize on it on Wednesday with the fourth straight victory over a big name like Michael Chiesa. All right, before we get out of here, let's get into our 3 best bets as we always do. Let me pull this thing up for you guys. I'll kick things off as we usually do. So my first one that I got, pull it up. There we go. I got Neil Magny, round 4 plus 1950 and round 5 plus 2550. You guys know I love that round prop. I feel like he will be live enough to go out there and just pick apart Michael Chiesa later in that fight, especially if Michael Chiesa has exerted himself too much in those first 2 or 3 rounds. I don't think he's going to be able to put up with that jab game of Magny and that pressure. Again, it doesn't need to be power when you're talking about a cardio machine like Neil Magny. It could just be like a Max Holloway type of overwhelming, where you're going to go out there and just put it on Michael Chiesa. So that's the first prop that I'm going with, or first 2, if you want to call it. I kind of lump them together anyway. Lazzez, round 2, like I said, I think that's where Warlley Alves really starts to suck the wind. The knees up the middle are going to be there for Mounir Lazzez. I think he's very live to get that round 2 finish. I wish I did throw that round 3 prop in there as well too. I do think both of those are live. Even if you don't want to take Lazzez inside the distance, I think round 2 and round 3 pay out way better. And I think he's very, very live for a finish here. And a guy against Warlley Alves who likes that exit sign if things are not going his way. All right, next up, I like Ricky Simon to win this fight inside the distance, plus 155. I think that's a safe plus money parlay or prop there, as I believe that his opponent, Perello, doesn't really have much off of his back. Horrible off of his back. Not really good takedown defense. And I feel like Simone's going to want to go in there, make a statement against this UFC newcomer who probably doesn't even deserve to be in the UFC. If he doesn't go out there and finish this guy, there's going to be a lot of questions about Ricky Simone. And this is a lose-lose. I mean, you go out there, you beat this guy, you're supposed to beat this guy. But if you go out there and win a decision against this guy, it's probably worse than losing against this guy. So go out there, get the finish. I like Ricky Simone inside the distance at plus 155. Cody, you're up.
All right, we're going to start off with Umar Nurmagomedov by decision, minus 125. We like to start off slow, take a little bit of the safe side. And the safe side is that Umar traditionally has been a decision guy. That's generally how he gets the job done. He shows inside the distance victories over lower level opponents, and I think that Morozov is going to be able to at least show him some type of test. So to play the first one safe, we're going to take Nurmagomedov. If this goes to decision in Abu Dhabi with Khabib cornering him, he's going to get it. So minus 125 to start things off. Then we're going to take a little bit more risk. Tyson Nam via KO plus 155. I like this prop. Listen, Tyson Nam shows you what happens if you have a suspect chin and you stand in front of him. As far as guys being able to take him down, that hasn't been something that they've been able to do traditionally. And the thing with Matt Schnell, he's not an evasive type fighter. Kai Kara-France is an evasive type fighter. He can dart in and out of the pocket, get out of there. Sergio Pettis, again, same thing. Evasive type fighter, great counterpuncher, moves in, moves out. Schnell's got to come forward and make it greasy. Schnell's got to come forward and make it a fight. And if he does, he's going to get caught at some point by Tyson Nam. The straight-up money line seems good, but if Tyson Nam's going to get the victory here, it's probably going to be by KO. And that pays plus 155, so I definitely like that prop. And then moving on, we're going to go with Jones via decision, plus 315. Mason Jones has got a lot to prove, no doubt about it. This one's a risky one, but they're giving you a nice price tag of plus 315. With Mike Davis, I mean, we know he's really durable. If Jones does win this fight, it's likely going to be decision. He's just got to pull off that underdog victory. Now, you see all the love and all the affection coming in for him. Moving down from a 300 favorite was Mike Davis down to his current price tag of minus 160. Mason Jones getting flipped from a plus 250 all the way down to like a plus 140. You see a lot of people having respect for this guy. You see a lot of people, giving him some kudos. Mike Davis has been off for a while, but he's still just really strong, really durable. This is going to be two high-level strikers going in there, back and forth. I'm hoping that Jones ends up on the right side of the decision victory. And if he does, plus 315 just seems like a really nice, juicy price tag that I want to chase. So hopefully, last week we got Imavov got kicked off late, and that kind of cost us one. But we ended up going 1-1. One was a plus money. One, my God, I mean, Alicio Di Chirico folded him in the first round with a head kick. What can you do about it? Hopefully this time we do a little bit better and get all three to actually go off. But beyond that, we got two nice plus money price fights and Umar Nurmagomedov to hopefully at least keep things even.
I went 2-3 last week. I hope that I can go at least give me one MMA gods. And I hopefully it would be one of those round props for Neil Magny, because that would be Red Panty Night over here at the Jazz Residence. All right, let's get back to the ending of the show. So just to remind you guys, tomorrow we're going to be back for the final weigh-in where me, Cody, Bleed, and MMA Prediction Guru are going to be going over the final weigh-in for the Wednesday card. And then we're kind of back to normal where we have the Thursday prop show with me and Cody for UFC 257. And then obviously Friday, once again, for the final weigh-in with the whole crew. Man, I'm kind of bummed that we're getting near the end of this fight week because I was really looking forward to it the entire time. I'm like, sick. We got 3 fights in 8 days. I'm down. Let's do it, right? But now that it's coming to a close, we got next weekend off. So the UFC just throwing us a curveball there and be like, hey, here's fights. And now let's just chill for a weekend. And yeah, we're back to it again. But I'm fine with it. You got anything to say on the way out here, Cody?
No, I mean, obviously it's just fights rolling into each other, so we're all good with that. But yeah, it's great that people have, again, taken the time out of their nights to join us. And I know a lot of these fights, it's like, oh man, there's just so many fights. UFC's having cards. We got Saturday, there's a McGregor fight, but all these cards have interesting spots, interesting props, interesting spots to make money. But there's a lot of fights, so don't feel like you have to force every single fight. Don't feel like you have to, geez, I got to slightly. You can pick the fights that you like, and I think that this is a card that has at least 3 or 4 good parlay pieces. And as we've talked about those props tonight, a lot of really good, solid plus money props. So maybe the first event of 2021 didn't go our way as much as we wanted to, but it's a long season, and this is definitely not a sprint, it's a marathon. And as we've been here at the end of the season for many, many years now, we're just getting things started in 2021. So thanks for everyone for joining tonight, and hopefully we can make the second event of 2021 the big one for you.
For sure. And I do want to shout out Al Mac, who just said Wednesday during the day, we got a post show after the Wednesday card wraps up. Come right back here to Odds HQ, and they'll definitely have a post show for you guys to recap everything that went down. Reminder, 9 a.m. Eastern prelim start time for the Wednesday card. So don't be that chump that gets up at 12 o'clock. Oh, crap, I already missed the prelims. I reminded you. Don't say I didn't. All right. We'll see you guys tomorrow for the final weigh-in. We're going to be back at 9 p.m. Eastern again with the whole crew. Good luck on all your bets. Appreciate you guys joining us on a week-to-week basis. And if you haven't already, hit that goddamn like button and hit that subscribe button as well too. We would really appreciate it. All right. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. Me, Cody, we're signing off. See you guys tomorrow.